whenever we go into that presentation, feel free to sort of put your graphic up.
Yeah.
I mean, from my understanding of that story, where the power of it is that it's talking about perspective positioning with people. So there are three different viewpoints in there. There are the two people that are arguing in there, and then there's the referee, which is the lion in this case.
Yep.
There, and because they're talking about animals in there, animals can't really talk. So in NLP, we call that a selectional restriction violation, which Jason will elaborate more of when he talks about the Metamodel, and that it can't make sense. But the structure of the story, so we think, well, it's just a stupid story, and what have you, and so consciously we don't evaluate it as critically as we would do if we were talking about real people. So if we were talking about Giles, Jason, and Magdalena, for example, in this, we'd all be sort of scrutinizing one another with that and taking our various positions. But because we've used animals, which we all know can't speak, we just evaluate it as being a little bit of frivolous nonsense. But there is a deeper message behind all that, and that kind of disassociates us from it's a form of disassociation and an association there, because we have to associate ourselves into the role of these characters in order to be able to understand the message of the story. But we're disassociated because we can. Someone's going with this back to that.
I'm sorry, Josh. I had to switch my camera off.
My God, it must be good. What's going on there, Magdalena? Can I have some?
You can have some. The moment you said that we'll be talking about me, Magdalena, and Jason, and I just put everyone into a role, and it just made me.
There we go.
I'm sorry, Josh, you're a tiger.
Well, I probably am the tiger.
I'm a silly Polish monkey believing grass is blue, but Jason, you are the king. But it just made me laugh so hard. I'm sorry.
We're supposed to be talking about storytelling, and I've asked Elijah to explain at some point, if he feels like talking about it, to explain a little bit more about linguistic alchemy for those of us that stick around later. That's only if you want to do it, Elijah. And explaining to and getting Jason to explain about the Metamodel and the Milton model in general terms. And I think the Milton model.
Well, I've lost what I can't find now, so we're doing well.
You've lost what you can't find. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes
I can't find it. It's there somewhere.
It's in that place where you're not looking.
It is, absolutely. It will come to me soon. We can start off with this graphic. So I've broken the Metamodel and Milton model. We discussed it briefly last week or the week before. So if you want to get details and recover information from their impoverished map, then we can chunk down to get all the details back out. And then we can obviously go back the other way using the Milton model to be artfully vague. And let me just get to my page here.
You have got screen access if you want it.
I'll stick that up for the tick. Where is that? share screen. I want to share this. Can you see my picture?
Yes.
Oh, goody.
Ooh.
Okay, so you can see my picture. This is the meta model laid out. What I've got is, it's very easy to follow. So it's broken down into 3 categories. We have deletions, and we distort, and we generalize. So they're the 3 things that we automatically do with everything that comes into our neurology. So we either delete it, distort it, or generalize it, and then it ends up in our bodies somehow. So if we're going to delete, we can do a simple deletion, which is just simply where you take something out of the context. So Bob said it. What did Bob say specifically? Nobody knows what Bob said. And the point again is to recover information that was lost. I've got to find this other graphic because it's really good, but we'll get there in a sec.
Have you got one with a frame thing on it?
I've got, yeah, that's the NLP communication model. But this one is what I'm trying to find.
Okay.
Yeah, I know where it is, just can't find it.
Yeah,
We'll do a search for meta.
But I think
We have unspecified comparison. So words like bigger, faster, anything that's comparing something to something else is a comparison. So you could say, get the train, it's faster. Faster than what? What are you comparing this thing faster than to? How do we know it's faster? Lack of referential index. That's to do with who is doing the talking, who's referring to the thing here. So he said, who's the he in this topic? And then the unspecified verb is also to do with how did they do the thing they're doing. So he moved from here to there. How did he move? Did he run? Did he hop? Did he skip? Did he fly? Did he get in the car? Because all these things are important when we're communicating. Because if you want to get information from somebody, they tend to chunk and they tend to stick at a certain level. So if I was, for example, call Giles into this for a minute and say, Giles, tell me about what happened today.
Today was an interesting day.
Okay, so if we stop there, he's taken the whole of the day's activities and put it into 5 words. And today was an interesting day.
Not
And
much.
I've got no context around that, no idea what's going on with that. Not a clue. And nobody else does either, apart from Giles, who of course has got all the information inside his head. So I'd need to dig in that. Interesting, Giles. What was interesting about your day?
Well, I went to Andover.
Okay, so you went. How specifically did you go to Andover?
Well, I drove to Andover.
You drove. What did you drive?
I drove my car.
You drove the car. Okay, cool. So
Then
you've
I
got an
drove
idea
my
now
bus.
what's going on. You
I
drove
can't
to
remember.
Andover. You see how it works. So you can start to begin to come right down with details. So once we've deleted a load of things, and the reason we do that is because too many bits of information hit our senses at any one time, and we can't possibly deal with all of them. So we delete a vast majority of it. Now, here's an experiment for you. You're all sitting in a house or in a room that you're very comfortable with. Okay, so without looking behind you, close your eyes and recall what's behind you. And then in a moment, yeah, you can open your eyes and you can look around to see how much of that you missed. Okay, so open your eyes now and have a look around just to see how much you've missed off of the list of the things you've recalled. And it happens everywhere.
Absolutely loads.
We end up with 2 types of things. And we get hallucinations. You've heard of hallucinations. So in NLP, we have 2 types, and in hypnosis, we have 2 types as well, the same ones. We have a positive hallucination and the negative hallucination. Now, it's not to do with whether they're good or bad. That's not the context. A positive hallucination is putting something in the scene that wasn't there. And the negative hallucination is simply doing the opposite and removing something that was in the scene that you've taken out. Now, why do we do this? Because not everything in there is relevant to what we want to do. Okay. So any questions on a very quick run through on what deletions are all about, how that works?
That makes perfect sense. Well, it makes sense to me. Don't know whether it will do to everybody else.
Can you go over the 2 types of hallucination again?
Positive hallucination is when you put something or imagine something in the scene that wasn't there. So, for example, if you saw a ghost and there wasn't a ghost there, or you saw a picture that wasn't there, that's positive. Negative is when you've removed something from what was actually there. So there's
Like if I can't find my car keys, but they were right in front of me the whole time.
that's the one.
I
Go to the
didn't
cupboard
see
and
'em.
get the salt.
That's
Where's
a
the salt?
perfect
On the shelf.
example.
Perfect
Yeah.
example.
Okay.
That's a negative hallucination. So we've got deletions out of the way. We then do distortions. We distort many ways. There's like 5 ways we can distort. So we can use these things called normalizations, which is what Elijah was talking about a little while ago, a couple of weeks ago. And they are when you turn a process and you freeze the process. And the test is, can I put this thing in a wheelbarrow? If I can't, then it's a normalization. So for example, living is a process. We're constantly living, we're constantly moving along and doing things. All the words that end in an ing are processes. But to live is a normalization. It's frozen, it's static, it stops. Another example is relationship. Relationship is a normalization, but to relate or relating is actually a process. Okay, so a lot of the time people will come and say, the relationship in this office stinks. Okay, great, cool. How do we address a relationship? We get it back into a process. What we say is, okay, well, how would you rather relate in this office? Or when you're relating with people in this office, what particularly stinks about it? Because we can deal with a relating activity, we're doing something, but we can't deal with a relationship. Although it's a label, it's the distinction between something that's frozen, which is just a thing that you can't even, doesn't even exist, and this thing which we can change, which is a process. A process is a sequence of steps, isn't it? You do this, you do this, you do this. Then we have cause and effect. So we distort things with cause and effect. How many times have you ever been cut up and it's the other driver's fault? 100%. You put him at cause and you're at effect. So this is sometimes called a victim mode for the effect. Yeah. So you can have bully a victim, or you can have hero and wimp. You can have various labels in this box for cause and effect. But what you want to try and do, if you can, is get yourself to cause rather than effect. And that's where you take decisions. You're in control, you're in charge. And then therefore you give yourself more options. If you're at effect, what happens is you're backed into a corner, quite literally. You have no options, you have no choice, and everything is somebody else's fault. Yeah, that makes sense. Complex equivalence is when you try to equate this to this. So a cause and effect statement might be he loves me. Sorry, a cause and effect might be I'm late because I missed the bus. The bus caused me to be late. Yeah. A complex equivalence would be something like this. He loves me because he bought me flowers. So of course the question to ask there is, how specifically does the fact that he bought you flowers mean that he loves you? You've complexly equated that to that. And they're not necessarily equal, not even necessarily even in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay.
So cause and effect is when one thing leads to another, like one thing makes something else happen, like you said, you were late because of traffic or whatever. And complex equivalence is like a meaning, like if you thought the meeting was important enough, then you wouldn't have been late in the first place.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you sort of take they're almost like cousins, cause effect and complex equivalence. They're very closely interlinked, where one is the reason why something happened and the other one is what something means.
The meaning we ascribe to it. Yeah.
Yeah. We often do that. Often because we create meanings out of everything, almost everything being the next category, generalization. But
meanings can often be values as well. We've talked about criteria and values.
In fact, one of the challenge for complex equivalence is the word means. So I've got it in my diagram. I will get that diagram. I'll find it. It might take a little while, but I will find it. So you can say, how specifically does X cause Y? How specifically does you missing the bus cause you to be late? How does him looking at you a funny way mean he hates you? These things that all come into it. Then we have a mind read. Yeah, so a mind read is simply guessing what somebody else's internal representation is. So I said the other day about the information comes in, we do stuff inside our own heads, we create our own version of reality. There's no way in the world of knowing what I've created in my head. You can either guess at it, and if you're guessing at it, that's a mind read. So Giles hates me because he wore a stripy shirt tonight. Well, that's a mind read, is guess. Yeah, so there's all these things that are coming in. The presupposing things, mind reads are presupposing. A lot of this stuff presupposes. But mind reads are, don't try and guess, just go with the flows. Again, how the question for that is, how do you know? Where's your evidence to prove this? And then we have a lost performative. So the lost performative, why is it not on here?
Is that who said it? Or
Yeah.
No, so if you said a fiction type saves 9, it would be an example.
Yeah, that's who said. So you've got the lost performative, it's how do you know, who do you know, all these things there. So it's to do with the person that's saying, the person that said it. So the lack of referential takeoff is what are you referring to? Then we generalize, we have universal quantifiers, and these are what I call the all words, exclusively all 100% on. So you can't, for example, be a little bit pregnant. You can't, for example, be say all, I mean only a few people. So you can say nobody loves me, everybody hates me. Okay, of course it's not true, because at least one person in the world loves you, and at least one person in the world hates you probably, but not everybody. Yeah, you're never on time, you're always late.
What I find,
what
I find most interesting about these things like everybody, always, anybody, and things like that, is they're very often used to express limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And or I'd say almost always limited beliefs. Yeah, you're always rude to me. You never listen to me, and things like that. That they're coming from a very narrow and impoverished sort of map of the world. It
is. It's
even just now, Giles said almost always it's a limiting belief, right? So he actually did a generalization when talking about the generalization. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Hey, we're going meta now.
Yeah. Then we have the last part on there is called modal operators. We have two types of modal operators. We have modal operators of necessity, and then modal operators of possibility. So the necessity ones, again, there's a whole list of them. So need, must, have, should, all those ones are words that, and when you say them to yourself to try it on for size, you actually resent them a little bit. You must go and wash the dishes. You feel, well, do I have to? Really? There's an argumentative side that comes out, at least for me. The modal operators are possibilities where they give you choice. So you could, might, maybe, possibly, optional. Yeah. So they open things up. So you can see there, by putting necessities in, you could put somebody easily at effect. And by putting possibilities in, you could put somebody easily at cause, because they get to decide. And with children, a great way to do that is to use what they call double binds, which is a false question. It's a question with false answers. So they end up choosing anyway. So you can either brush your teeth and then watch the film before bedtime, or you can watch the film and then brush your teeth before bedtime. Which do you want to do? Well, in their own minds, they've chosen the sequence, except it's the same result. You end up where you want to be anyway. But you give them a choice.
The trance chair or the hypnosis chair.
Yeah, absolutely. Which gives them the choice, which puts them at that cause. So have you got any questions about that brief run through on the meta model?
So the whole idea is to get the information that's missing.
Yep.
So like if someone says, like, so say you're in generalize, right? And somebody says, I don't know, I can't ever do it. Right? they've sort of generalized that from a modal operator of possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't. And then you could ask, like, how would you like, what sort of thing would you ask to kind of go to, like, to get more information from that sort
Well,
of
how
thing?
do you know you can't? So this is the diagram that I just held up a second ago. If we start here, we have cause, effect, and complex equivalence. So the first panel here is all to do with my distortions. Then we have the deletions over there, and then the generalizations.
So this is how our map
Deletion.
of reality, or our model of the world, is that you talked about, is formed.
That's it. Yeah.
On,
So this is all of this. So if you had, for example, cause and effect, you say how specifically does X cause Y? This is for the cause and effects. For the complex equivalence, how specifically does X mean Y? So how does this thing mean that thing? How does it mean that he bought you flowers mean that he loves you? The mind read, how specifically do you know? And then to convert a nominalization back in, we can stick it with an ing back on the end, or take the word, take the ion off communication, make it back into a process.
how do you know is a very useful question, because that's kind of that elicits someone's strategy, doesn't it? Or the as you, is it deep structure as you were referring?
Yeah. Well, that will start telling you, it will start uncovering deep structure, because they'll give you words like emotions and feelings and thoughts and things that are going on inside them, inside their head, rather than just labels. So how do you know is a very deep question. Yeah, you're right. Digs right down into the stuff.
Yeah.
So here we have the deletions. So simple deletion is about what and with what. Those are the sorts of questions you challenge that with. Loss performative, according to who? Who said? How specifically is the unspecified verb. Unspecified comparison, compared to what? What are you comparing this against that? And then we have lack of referential index, who or what things. So that's all to do with, you know, this thing's bigger than that thing. That's a comparison. Or what thing specifically? Yeah.
You know, well, this product is cheaper compared to what? Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. 50% off. 50% off of what? Universals, never, everywhere, always, nobody, all, they all go in there. And the way we beat that is we use the thing called the absurdity frame, which is to make it sound really, really ridiculous. And it's to make them make it sound really ridiculous. So nobody loves me. Nobody, really? Nobody in the world? Not even me? And they go, oh, stop being stupid, you don't count. Well, as soon as one person doesn't count, the whole thing falls over. Yeah, as soon as one thing is never true, as soon as one thing doesn't fit that, it's no longer existing. And then we have the modal operators, but this bit here is called Cartesian coordinates. And this is 4 questions that are very important that you ask people. So what, just a question for you, what will happen when you do this thing? Yeah, so that presupposes they're going to do it. And because you've got a will in there, what will happen? That's the presupposition they're going to do it. What will happen if you don't do it? Okay, so you want to get a new job. Okay, what will happen when you get this new job? What will happen if you don't get the new job? And then you have the 2 opposite questions. These are the sorts of things that Elijah likes doing. So what won't happen if you don't do it? What won't happen if you don't get the new job? Now, what these last two questions do is they make your brain go, what? Because you've got to go and think about the answers. They're not easy. You know, what will happen? That will happen. What will happen? That will happen. What won't happen? I've never thought about what won't happen. And then what won't happen if you do get the job? Well, what won't happen if I get this new job is I won't be stood behind the checkout for 5 hours a day, bleeping somebody else's things through. Yeah, so that's how that all works together. So I will send you that picture, the other picture, and the bigger version of this as well while we're there.
Thank you, Jason.
Welcome. Any more questions on what I've covered there on the Metamodel?
I like this. It really makes you think about what people say. Myself, probably.
Absolutely.
Oh, that always happens to me. Oh, that never works for me. Oh, whatever. people say.
Yeah. Just think of an example of when it's just say that question. It never happens to you? Or
Yeah,
just
that's a good one,
really
James. I like that. Yeah, just like throw it back for once.
definitely with a sort of surprised look in your eye, and they'll say, well, there was this one occasion when it worked or something.
Okay.
So here we are. So
Now, is there any rule of, can we define what type of a person the person is based on this knowledge? If somebody is always generalizing and saying, you know, it never happens to me, I will never pass this exam, I will never do it, I will never finish, nobody, everybody. Is it like a certain personality who is doing things like this?
no,
There are,
If you
no,
have a
not-
client, you know, as
it's
a
someone who's
therapist,
stuck.
or
yeah, it's not hard and fast, but you can help piece things together. So success leaves clues, and behavior leaves clues too. So if they're always using this words, you know, things like never and that sort of thing, and they're using negative words all the time, then yeah, there might be some sort of clues around there, sort of being depressed and these things. You can detect sort of behavioural issues.
I would say that there's no real hard and fast rules as to what it means about them, but it does mean that the same thing they're doing will exist on the other side. So if they really generalize problems and say, oh, it always happens to me, or it, you know, it never works for me, that kind of thing. If you get a resolution with that problem, doing whatever other techniques you're doing or therapeutic work you're doing, and you get change there, and it's a positive change, then they are likely to also generalize the positive
generalize
thing
to the,
in a good way. So, oh, it's always working now, or, you know, it's never a problem anymore, that kind of thing. So they're likely to still do that on the other end of it, in the same way that they do on this side of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, I know what you mean, and
Not guaranteed,
that's a,
but it can happen.
I'm gonna show a slide like that. So this, yeah, I was going to say this for Elijah, but it's quite pertinent to what we're talking about. With someone expressing in universals, what they're doing when they're saying that is they're putting themselves like this little fish inside the, you know, that's stuck inside the goldfish bowl in the center there. So that is, you know, that is their problem. They can't see sort of, they can't see beyond that, beyond that imaginary circle. And what the question, what that Cartesian question, what won't happen if you don't get your result, will take them into this is alluding to where Elijah is going with this linguistic alchemy as well, is you go by asking them what won't happen or what wouldn't be happening if you didn't have this problem. You go to everything that's outside of the problem with that, which opens up the universe. By asking what won't happen if you don't have the problem, that presupposes not just the possibility of what's outside the problem, but everything else, which is the entire universe in this in this particular instance with that. By asking, because of the way the not operator works, you can't not imagine something. If someone says, don't think of an elephant, you know, think of not an elephant, you have to imagine the elephant in order to decide whether it, you know, whether it exists in your mind or not. And the very fact of not imagining it is actually bringing it into existence in your world. So these questions, these negative questions are very, very powerful in sort of opening up, in shifting people from a space of being stuck and and moving them into a place of pretty well unlimited possibilities in that. Does that make any sense to anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Lack
of practice there, but
so that
all
you're
makes sense.
stuck inside the problem, and then you think, well, what's not the problem, or what have you, and then you go beyond that, and you think, well, what's who would, you could ask this question: who would I be right now if I wasn't what would I be if I wasn't a fish? And you can say, right, well, I'd be everything that is not a fish. But I'd also be, I also wouldn't be a fish. So that is absolutely everything in the universe with that. So you can be, I mean, it's a stretch because we are constrained by our physical bodies in this realm anyway. But I think if this blue box represents the universe of our own mind, then we are God of our own universe in this particular scenario, other than the normal constraints of political law and the nature that our body, the fact that our bodies decay and eventually we get old and we die. But in terms of what we're actually capable of achieving in this world, it's pretty well limited once you're able to step outside and consider everything that isn't the problem that you're experiencing. Anyway, I'll hand that back to, I'll take that off now and hand that back over to Jason. So how do I
Okay,
stop?
so just put those 3 files in the chat there. There for you to keep. Milton model is the opposite. So we still want information, but we want information from them in their own heads, and we're getting them to fill their own map up with details. So you give them vague words, labels, and they go and create the meanings, and they go and create the thoughts, the feelings around that. So you remember that time when you felt really happy, and you probably remember what you were doing and where you were at the time and who you were there with, if anybody. And if you remember that time really, really clearly, take yourself back there now. You can obviously see yourself there, and you can feel the temperatures, and you can hear the sounds of anything that was going on, and you can get right into that mode. Now, if you actually listen to what I said there, I've given you 0 context, and yet you feel all the information yourself, and you know exactly what moment I'm talking about. But the funny thing is, I don't know what moment I'm talking about, because it's not relevant for me to know about. It's relevant for you to know about. It's relevant for the client to know about. Yeah. And good storytellers, good story creators, authors, that's the one, authors, when they write a good book, they use words that make the reader go off into their own world and create the images. Because you can't see, you look at, unless you've got a picture book, but you read a book, it's full of words. So they've got to create the image in your head somehow, and they use it by using sensory language. So seeing, hearing, feeling, they do all those words in there, describe it. So the wizard was wearing a purple robe with a red trim, and he carried a long staff and wore a pointy hat. And on the pointy hat, it had a golden star. Now you've all got an idea now what the wizard looked like. If I just said the wizard, you'd put up an idea. If I said the dog, which is what David Snyder uses all the time. So the dog, which had 3 legs, that was painted blue, rolled up the hill. You're like, what? How does this work? Because what happens is, every single word that lands, you start to form your own images up here with. So the dog, you've gone, okay, what's a dog look like? You've got it in your head, and you've gone, I've seen 20,000 dogs in my lifetime. Let's grab an image of a dog. That's what he looks like. Now, generalization there was it's a he, not a she, so I've dragged that in. Then you've gone, okay, cool. Which had 3 legs. Hang on, my dog's got 4 legs. I best take one off. and redraw the picture again. So you can very easily confuse people with your language, which is really exciting stuff. And you can also very easily guide somebody. So you can say the blue dog that had 3 legs, or the blue 3-dogged leg rolled up the hill. In this case, you get to create the picture as you want it built. And it means the reader, the follower, goes along with the story rather than having to recreate everything from the beginning. Yeah, Elijah's heard that before. Java's heard that before, sure.
Sure. Yeah, if you can put the descriptors or the adjectives and adverbs at the beginning rather than the end, it just makes everything flow smoothly.
It does, and it implies things. So when you say the bit, the previous bit's already been accepted unconsciously. So
yes.
yeah, Giles, when we meet in a week's time or so for that coffee,
Yeah.
that presupposes we're going to have a coffee and we're going to meet. When we finish that, we'll pop round to the kebab shop and have a kebab, or we could go and get a Chinese. What do you want to do afterwards? So in order to have a kebab or a Chinese, it's presupposed the other stuff's happened, because it can't not have happened in order to decide whether we're having a kebab or Chinese. Yeah, this is how you can start to influence and lead people where you want to go with life. So again, the kids, a lot of you have got kids, a lot of you haven't got kids. So you said to the kids, right, okay, when we pick you up from school, we go swimming. When we finish swimming, you can either go and get a lolly or you can get an ice cream. It presupposes that they're going to go swimming. Yeah, because that part's already in. It's all clever stuff. Mind reading. So the Milton model is all about going upwards. In this case, the mind reading is not reading their mind and getting information, guessing what's going on. It's planting the mind read into their head. So it's giving them the information you want them to have. So, for example, I imagine that you're curious. Causes people to be curious all of a sudden. Yeah. You may be wondering about many things. These are mind reads. I'm guessing, but I'm also telling you at the same time to start thinking about this.
There's also a lot of permissive language in this. Like it's never you are curious. It's you might be curious, or you may consider, right? So there's always this sort of you don't want to do the universal thing at all. There's always like this kind of, well, maybe, like I went to a presentation once and the guy stood up and said, well, some of you are here because you know what you want, and some of you might not have decided yet, and others might not even have a clue what this is about. And by saying things that way, what he's done is he's included everybody. And so we're all in now, we're all paying attention, because I might be the one to, well, I don't know what I want, I haven't decided. But the person sat next to me might be someone who knows, or she knows exactly what they want. But we've both been included in the presentation, because he said that, oh, you may, or you might, or perhaps, or those kind of words make it much more easily accepted by the other person.
Yeah, because it presupposes choice, doesn't it? With that, and if you tell someone they don't have to do something, they're more likely to comply, aren't they?
Yep, that's true. So if you give them permission to do their thing, their way, because if you tell them, they'll reject it. So the best way, if you're communicating with a client in a therapeutic sense, is to get the information and the solution from the client. Because if you give them the solution, it hurts when I do this, well, don't do it then. They might reject it. If you say, well, how could you stop it hurting? Well, I could stop doing it. Oh, okay. They're not going to reject that because it's their idea. It's very good if you've got a boss. Bosses are sometimes very, very stubborn, don't want to know, don't want to listen to people on the ground, if they're rubbish bosses. Good bosses don't, obviously, but I've had a few rubbish bosses. And the way to get what you want achieved is to make it sound like it was their idea in the first place. Plant the idea, plant the seed, and then in a week's time, they'll come up with an amazing idea. How did you get that amazing idea? Well done, superb. Because it's their idea, they'll push it through. And it works almost every single time.
It's the Milton model has got a lot as well to do with sort of pacing and leading, hasn't it?
That's right.
That's right. With sort of like, the fact that you're here listening to what we have today
Yeah.
means you know, may mean you having certain thoughts, you know, and as you're having those thoughts, you may even begin to notice yourself becoming curious as to what this is about and where it's going. I mean, you haven't really said anything in that, but you've engaged a certain train of thought with doing that. Like you say, you kind of invoked the curiosity emotion inside someone by just introducing it as a possibility.
That's right. So we still
I had a little story actually. So after last week, when you were talking about pacing and leading, I was in a meeting on Friday on Teams with a customer, and I actually suddenly thought, hold on, man, I can see a couple of the obvious things that we all agree on to soften everybody up, and it actually worked.
well
I
done.
just said, oh, we all want the system to get installed okay without any problems, and we really don't want any errors afterwards. And everyone was like, yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I just need to get a lot better.
Yeah, there's a thing.
Brilliant, because you see now you have a positive reference in your memory, right, of it working. So you're more likely to try it again.
I really am now, yeah, because
really
I
cool.
didn't think that I would be able to remember, but I was sitting there in that moment and I thought, hold on a minute, I can kind of calm things down a bit here. And it actually did.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well done, man. Well done.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
I appreciate it. It comes from you, all of you, which is great.
But we didn't do that. You did that.
And as you begin to experience the realization of what you've just said, can you imagine how much further the positive ramifications you're already beginning to have will go, way beyond what even you can imagine right now? Can you imagine how much further they'll go?
You've got me imagining it, Giles.
He never told you to, though. He was asking a question. You know, it's funny, isn't it? Language is really funny.
Yeah.
So the Milton model and the Metamodel are the two most powerful communication models on the planet, in my opinion. They are super. In fact, the Metamodel came about before NLP was even founded. It came about then NLP afterwards, but it was the first thing they discovered.
Was that Chomsky's work that did that, or was that someone else?
Chomsky was involved. Chomsky, Bandler, and Grinder. They were doing it along the way to create NLP. So they created this. They found this first before NLP even had a name, and then they named it NLP. And you know how it got named, don't you?
Got stopped by the police or something.
Richard Bandler was reading some books. He had a book open on neuroscience. He had a book open on computer programming because he was a programmer, and he had a computer program on linguistics as well.
With a bag of Coke.
He just happened to have them in the right sequence, and somebody said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he went, "Neuro-linguistic programming." And he grabbed the word off each of the books. That's how it came about. Yeah.
You couldn't make this up, could you?
Well, funny enough, he did.
Yeah. Well, that's what he said. He said NLP is my hallucination.
You know, it's really funny because the next thing I was going to talk about was an extended quote. So quotes and extended quotes. So you know what a quote is? A quote is when somebody says something, and the extended quote is when somebody said that somebody said something. Yeah. So you can say, Giles was telling me the other day that if you take a piece of ice and put it on a hot cup of tea, the ice melts, but it takes a long time to melt. Whereas if you put it on cold water, it melts quicker. Now, because I've said that Giles says, especially if it's an authoritative figure that said it, it's taken as gospel. So Einstein is one of the most quoted people in the world. Einstein once said cows were yellow in medieval days. Okay, they were yellow in medieval days because Einstein said it. There's no proof there, there's no connection there, but Einstein said it.
It must be true.
Yeah. Wyatt Woodsmall, who's the wisest man I ever met, once told me that you really want to learn well, you have to take responsibility to revisit the notes after the seminar. So yeah, and then you can go further. So you can say, my mate John is a classic. So my friend John, you can always do these examples with my friend John. And my friend John saw the doctor. So it's not about anybody else anymore. It's not even about you or for the client. It's about your friend John seeing his doctor. And his doctor told him that, blah, 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 blah. But all the while, you're actually linking it in for the reason of the client or the person you're talking to having some sort of change in their life now.
You can introduce scope ambiguity with that as well, can't you? By saying, and he said, and at that point, as soon as you said, and he said, it's no longer clear whether it's the doctor or John.
So it's going the other way, really. Like if you think about what we did with that whole, when you ask like, oh, who specifically, what specifically, what you're doing is you're on purpose leaving those things out so that the other person can put the pieces together in their own head, their way, and reach a solution. Yeah,
absolutely.
Basically, all the stuff you do, Elijah, it's
so example of so ambiguity. There's 4 types of ambiguity I've got here. I've got phonological ambiguity. Those are words that sound the same but have different meanings. So here. So you got here and you got here. They're both different. So you could use that in a sentence like this: hear the sound of my voice here as it begins to take you deeper into trance. Yeah, a classic one for sales is, by now you should have all the information you want to solve and all the answers to all the questions you need to make a purchase. But actually, the beginning part of that was embedded command as well. You got to buy now. Yeah. But it's a phonological. It's that thing. Read and read. I read the red book. Okay. And then you got a syntactic. So it's a confusion between a verb and an adjective. So hypnotizing hypnotists. There's a syntactic. So who is hypnotizing? Were the hypnotists themselves hypnotizing? Or was I hypnotizing the hypnotists? We're not quite sure about that, are we? Yeah. Scope ambiguity. So he drew a picture of himself in the nude. Work that one out. Who was in the nude? Was he in the nude drawing the picture? Or was he in the nude in the picture? We don't know. It's ambiguous. And then we have the punctuation ambiguity, which is when you change context on the spin of one word. So you could say, he bought a new watch as the ship sails out of the harbour. And you got there, the 2 sentences, he bought a new watch as the ship sails out of the harbour.
Here's one like that. I don't know what you're thinking. Like that will get you nowhere.
Yeah.
It's 2 sentences. And
that book that I just sent you a link to earlier is full of them.
It's full of them. Perfect.
Because the guy is called Anybody, or anyone. So
the one that we've been reading.
Yeah, that one. It's in there, but anyone. So the wizard said to anyone who was listening carefully. Anyone's the character's name. So you're like, huh? Is this to anyone or to anyone? Which part of the anyone is this? Brilliant stuff.
That's the beauty of that, isn't it? Because it goes in right under the radar. Your unconscious mind just applies to self in all of those in all of those situations.
You can use punctuation ambiguities as a misdirection too. So I want you to notice, hand me the glass. I want you to notice your hand with the glass. So notice your hand with the glass. So you can misdirect quite easily with that.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah.
You can notice hand me the...
Any questions? So Giles mentioned a selectional, restrictional violation, and they're quite fun. So if the trees could talk, what would they say? Yeah. If the boat on the harbour was there on a cold day, what would it be doing? Where would it go? What would it be thinking? All these things. It's given human characteristics and personalities to an inanimate object.
This book really jumped out at me as another.
Yeah. Your one does. Your lion, your tiger, and your donkey. That does definitely, because they can't talk normally.
Yeah, that's probably.
Wait. Do you mean they can't talk normally, or normally they can't talk?
Correct. He's got it.
Love
You
it.
start hearing them. You just start hearing them. You know, when like now you've talked about it for like 5-10 minutes.
Mhm.
Like my brain is kind of tuned into it, so I start hearing them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Good.
With that.
Are
So
there
I'm
any
being
further questions?
prime.
We'll hand it back over to Giles about Meta and Milton. I've not gone right into Milton model because there's more of it than Meta. We can cover a bit more on another night if we need to.
sure. Alan, Anna, any questions?
No, this is all good. Enjoyed this.
It's all good. All good.
Oh yeah. Oh,
All of it.
You know, the best bit is you start catching yourself to do it. If you want to learn the meta model, by the way, the best thing I ever found, and it was accident, I was driving my car down the road, I had the radio going, and the song came on, and I started meta modeling the song. You spend forever meta modeling it. You do yourself, drive yourself crazy. You pick a song, the Beatles. I saw her standing there. Saw who and where specifically was she standing? How was she standing? Why was she standing there? You've only had 4 words out of it. It's really good fun to do though, if you're bored.
Give that a try.
Okay,
That's
Giles,
good. I
back over
never
to you.
even considered trying that. That's
I
good.
haven't either,
I'm
but
gonna
it just
try that.
happened one day. And I thought, this is good.
Not Stu.
Mm,
I'm just downloading all your files there.
fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So what? So what do you notice from this story, in how it's in how it's structured?
Which one? The donkey one?
Yeah.
So let's open it up.
It's a good metaphor for a start, isn't it?
Yeah. It's literally defined the structure of an argument with someone, hasn't it? And
yeah,
it's, to me, it's it's described the futility of an argument.
yeah.
You could use this to tell someone they're being a bloody idiot, or you could use someone else who thinks someone else is being an idiot to the story, to tell them not to get worked up about it. Either way, it will work. It will work.
Thing is, it works on the premise that the map is not the territory. So, in other words, your own world is your own world, and somebody might see blue as green, somebody might see green as yellow. There's colour blindness going on, and if that's what they've been told all their life, then that's what they believe.
Well,
A story similar, which is the lion, the baby lion is born, but mummy and daddy lion disappear, and they leave the baby lion in a field. And it just happens to be a field with sheep. So the baby lion grows up with the sheep, the flock of sheep, until he's like a teenager, strutting around, and then all of a sudden an older lion comes in, and he's like, "What are you doing? You're not a sheep. You're a lion." Really? Yeah. Hey, look, you look like me. Don't look like them. But all his identity has been a sheep. So there's a metaphor in there too. So it's all about growth and about being who you're supposed to be, not who you think you are. No doubt you've seen. I've got a picture. It's a picture of a kitten looking into a puddle on the water on the ground. But when he looks in, there's a
You
bloody
see
great
the tiger.
tiger as a reflection. It's a brilliant picture.
I like it made me think of the Mark Twain quote, just listening to, like the line at the end was like, oh, ignorance moves on, and you know what I mean, the fact that you even engaged in this argument was the reason you were punished. Kind of reminds me of what Mark Twain said about never argue with stupid people. It's just like never argue with stupid people, because what they'll do is they'll bring you down to their level and then they'll beat you with experience.
Yeah.
So
True.
so you just let it go.
yeah. Reminded me of Facebook. A few years ago, you kind of get sucked into debates I've learned not to now, but you get sucked into debates with complete strangers, and what's the point?
Yeah.
You know. And as you say, you don't even know what their view is, and you don't need to care.
Yeah.
I used that on some on a thread in Facebook the other evening. There was some people that were getting really stressed out about how LinkedIn is not stopping people from supporting these Trump supporters that are rioting out of Capitol Hill and threatening to use violence and all that sort of thing. I just put in the thread, you know, this reminds me of a story, and I pasted that one in there, and it kind of, you know, it got them to see the humour in it rather than, you know, and stop blaming people for everything, because you can't. People that when people are in that kind of state, their map is impoverished by their emotions. They're not thinking in terms of logic. They're thinking in terms of emotion with that. And we all know, really deep down inside, that when people make decisions, they don't usually make them on logic. You know, they have the logic in there. They have this criteria set and this checklist that they
Never make them on logic.
through. But when it
They
comes
think
to,
they do, but they don't.
when it comes to exactly when it comes to taking action, it's about how they feel. You know, when someone says, "I have a gut feeling that this is the right thing to do," or whatever, that's not too far away from the truth.
See, what I do is I research everything. Well, let's say I want to buy
Everything.
as I say, everything, right? Let's say I want to buy a new phone, right? Or something, some other gadget or whatever, right? I'll research everything, all the major brands and all the different price point groups. And, you know, I'll look at memory and storage and screen size and value. And do you know what I mean? Like all sorts of stuff. But once I've got all the information, as time's running out, because my current phone is breaking, you know, it's starting to lose signal and the battery's rubbish, it doesn't charge and all that. So even though I'm taking all of this into account, when the moment comes that, okay, I need a phone now because mine's broken, I just make a gut instinct kind of like, okay, I'm going to have that one. Do you know what I mean? And actually, looking back at it in the future, it's probably not the correct decision based on all the stuff that I was researching. So then it's like, well, why did you spend all that time researching? It's more for your own, to sort of stop yourself going crazy, to make yourself feel like, okay, I did look it up and I did do the thing, and I did, because nobody likes to be wrong. Do you know what I mean? Or, and then no matter what someone says to you, you can justify it, because you say like, oh, why didn't you get the one with the big screen? Oh, because, and I could say like, oh, well, because the big screen uses more battery and I value battery power more. Do you know what I mean? And you can justify anything either which way.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day,
Beliefs, isn't
it's
it?
more for your own. I don't know what the right way of saying it is, but for your own benefit than anything else. And when it's crunch time, you'll often make a snap decision or a snap judgment, and it'll have nothing to do with all the research you've put in. Do you know what I mean? It'll do with like what Giles was saying, like a gut feeling or an intuition of some sort.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We normally decide on emotion, then justify with logic. So you do need your logical reasons there to back up your decision. Is a good one.
Yeah, they're there to blame when people, so you can sort of afterwards that you can use to justify or blame someone.
That's exactly what it is.
Wrong reason, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. The logic and the reason is to have potential excuses that you could bring up and say to other people in society so that you don't lose face in society. That's all it is. Yeah, you're going to do what you want to do instinctively. You're going to do that anyway, but you need logic so that you can say to other people why you made the decision you made without them judging you, because that's
And
ultimately what you
yourself,
want. Is you don't want to be, because being judged and being outcast from society is like it's like the same as death. Do you know what I mean? Even if it's not like outcast from society, even if it's like your social circle of friends, and let's say they all think you made a poor decision, and that not only a poor decision, but like, you know, it was very selfish, but nobody wants to be judged that way. Do you know what I mean? So they have to have some kind of logic in their own mind that will allow them to justify to the social dynamic, whether it's just, you know, a close personal group of friends, or a school, or a teacher, or in your job. You know, you have to justify to your boss why you made certain decision, right? You need to have that so that you're not outcast, because being outcast it's like, if it goes back to, like, you know, when we were tribal, and if you get outcast from the tribe, then you don't get to reproduce, and if you don't reproduce, then that's the same as not surviving, and not surviving is like the worst thing possible for anything that's living. Every living creature, even trees and animals and everything, just wants to survive and pass forward its seed to the next generation, right? That's just instinctual. So it's very important, and we have this deep-seated need to be accepted. Even if we don't like the people that are accepting us, we still need them to accept us.
Yeah, because people buy wants rather than needs. They buy needs too, but want normally gets bought first. So you buy the things you need. Obviously, you need food, you need this, but when it comes to things like cars, you know, you need a car. Do you need a car? But you want a car. And what specific car do you want? You know, do you need to have a blue one with fur seats? No, but you want that. And that's what you want to do. Your emotions take over. Your emotions decide, and then you justify. And you justify to yourself as well as other people. So if it's a difficult decision and you're not quite sure, then yeah, you need your logic again. So you can argue with yourself and say, I did make the right decision. I convinced myself. That's all cool.
I like what you were doing earlier, Alan, with your pacing and leading. I mean, this brings me, you know, what we've been talking about there is highly relevant, because what Elijah was describing as talking in terms of logic and what have you, there are three layers of in persuasion of influence. You've got logos, which is the language of the past. It's the language that the courts use. It's the decision-making process, or logic, reasoning. Then you've got ethos, which is to do with criteria and values, and you know, and commonality, and how you differentiate yourself from your competitors. And then you've got pathos, which is the way forward, which is where the emotion, it's also where the language of emotion comes in to things. And what you did quite well there was to unite people with this pacing and leading. You know, it's clear we all want software that, you know, that works and is reliable, isn't it? So you immediately appealed to the ethos of the culture. We all want the same thing. We're all in this together. I mean, do you remember when George Osborne tried that with us when the Conservatives first got elected in this country? How many times he kept repeating, "We're all in this together." You know, mistakes have been made in the past and what have you. So you're moving back into the you're moving back into the past there. If you wanted to slag someone off for it, you could say, well, how did we get to this situation? Who brought us into that situation? What? But if you're trying to defend it, you could say, well, okay, you know, mistakes have been made in the past, but you know, but we're all one team, and we all want the same things. You know, isn't it more important to focus on what we can do in order to prevent this happening again, so that we can look out in a year's time and know that today we made the right decision to move forward, and here's how we're going to do it, and offer them. That's when you offer them your plan.
Oh, it was one of the few times, and I know it's early for me, but it was a time where I could really feel it worked. Our salesman even phoned me afterwards for a chat, so I must have got through in some way. and as far as I was concerned, I was saying things that I maybe would have thought just recently didn't need to be said, but it kind of had a positive effect.
Keep that in mind.
Try and do that.
Anytime you're losing them and you see people and they're not paying attention, they look like they start looking at their watches or something like that, just bring their attention to something that they can verify as true. Even if you just say, well, we've been talking to this, we're sat here this afternoon and we've been speaking for quite a while, or something like that. That's 2 paces straight away that you've given them. If they've gone off track, you probably want to give 3 or 4, and then you can go and lead them, and then you can go into and after you've read this, I'm sure you'll have some questions, or I'm sure you'll have some questions after you've left here. So why don't we just go through this proposal again, so that, to make sure you've got all the information you need in order to make the right decision.
No, I like that. Yeah. I'm some way, as I say, I'm quite a way off thinking about it in the moment, but in that moment, I really had it that I could say, hold on a minute.
That's what's brilliant. It's come from your unconscious, right? That's what's brilliant, because that's a really good sign, because it's not the worst thing, but one thing that's not helpful is if you're in a situation and instead of being out here with your attention and paying attention to what's going on, you're in your own head thinking, well, what do I say? What do I say? And that's not cool. So the fact that it just kind of came out on its own from your unconscious, maybe you had a slight thought like, oh, maybe I could. And then you just said it and it wasn't until after you said what you said that you've realized that, hey, I said the right thing. Yeah. And that's very encouraging. It's very, very encouraging. It means you're getting it, and it's a fantastic result. Really, it is.
Right.
It is. Yeah, you should be proud of yourself, mate.
Yeah.
Well, so what, Magdalena, you've been very, very quiet this evening. Do you have any questions that you would like to put? You could unmute yourself if you wanted to, and we could hear you.
Oh, because I have questions, but they are spread on like 4 pages of notes.
Go for it. We're ready.
I would rather tell you a story which I think has ambiguity in it. I'm looking for English words, I'm sorry. There was an exhibition of a young artist, and the very well-known critic attended, obviously an authority in the artwork. And he came closer to this young artist and he said, do you want to hear my opinion about your work? The artist said, yes, please. It's useless. I know, but let's hear it anyway.
Yes, absolutely yes. Anytime anyone says something to put you down, misunderstand it on purpose. Absolutely, that's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Thank you, Magdalena. That's hilarious.
I like that.
That's a good one. Oh, that reminds me, Giles, one other little thing in your story about the donkey is the other moral was don't argue with an ass, which has a double meaning, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, I have a feeling, and I wanted to ask you, I think it's a question to Giles, Elijah, and Jason. In not necessarily this particular order. If I would say something like, let's suppose your problem is not present or whatever. Let's suppose, or let's assume. I have a feeling that let's suppose is more open and gives more space for movement. And let's assume I'm almost like feeling resistance straight away.
Yeah, suppose it's more, it's more permissive than assuming.
It's just like imagine, you know, let's suppose it already happened and it's, you know, you're just passing everything. And assumption is a little bit like, whoa, is it not too quick?
Excuse the nominalization. One is hypothetical and one is authoritative.
Oh, brilliant, Giles. Thank you very much.
Have I confused you?
No, you just gave me this nail to just sort of really understand why I feel what I feel.
Yeah, good.
Thank
So
you.
that's good. So you got what you needed.
Suppose is a very powerful word.
Yes.
Suppose is a very powerful word, because you could, you know, once you say suppose, you can
Everything
say
is
anything
allowed.
pretty much
Yeah,
after
everything
that,
is
right?
allowed.
It's
Yeah.
like the word imagine, you know.
Yeah.
Imagine for a moment, if you would, and then you could say anything, right? It really doesn't matter. It's very powerful.
That's a great way of closing someone, isn't it? You can say, well, you know, I know you really don't want to do this, and I'm fully behind you with that. But just suppose for a moment you were going to do this. Why might you do it? And then they'll start.
That with you do that with like stop smoking clients, right? Because a lot of times a stop smoking client will come because they've been forced to come by their family or their, you know, the spouse or someone, right? It's like, oh,
Or the authority, the doctor said to them, you have to stop smoking.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
And so you say, listen, I understand you don't want to stop smoking. I understand that people are pressurizing you or whatever. But suppose you did want to stop, not for their reasons, but for your own reason. Why might you want to? Right. And what it does is it gives you a little linchpin to then get behind their reason. You know, they might say like, oh, well, you know, I don't really care, like not too bothered about their health. They're not worried about cancer or anything, but they might say like, oh, you know, I don't like my granddaughter seeing me smoke or something. So, okay. So that's something you can work with, because now it's not the doctor's reason or the wife's reason or the children's reason. It's their reason. And the leverage you have is
consider it.
you know, that they are wanting to protect the grandchild, right? And that's kind of, otherwise they're not going to accept it if it's someone else's reason. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's their own reason, and that's why people will agree.
That's a good example of what I was saying earlier on. When you give them advice, if it doesn't fit their model, how they want it to fit, they'll check it out. If they come up with the idea, that's their idea. They're never going to get rid of it. Yeah.
That's the wonderful thing in a way. It's kind of, it takes a little while to get used to, but when you're doing change work with people, after a while, in the beginning it's very easy to kind of, you know, like, oh, I've learned these new skills and I'm going to influence people, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Because you get excited about what you've learned and you want to try stuff. But after you've had some experience in a few years, then you soon realize that there's like, as long as you get the change, you don't need to take credit for the change. Do you know what I mean? Let them have their own moment of glory. You know, let them think it was their idea. Let them, do you know what I mean? Whatever, it's all right. You know, as long as you got your outcome, which probably, you know, if you're a therapist, your outcome is to get paid or to get recommended or whatever it is. You know what I mean? As long as you got that, you don't need them to know that it was you who did it or planted the idea in their head or something. No, just let them have their own. Do you know what I mean? Let them have their own glory. Let them have their own success, their own triumph, and people will feel much better that way. You know, I
There's
think that's,
one thing I want to ask you, and it's not to Elijah, it's to everybody. But again, Jason, Elijah. When we say things like, we're finishing with this, don't we? Isn't it? Let's say, solutions tend to appear out of the blue, don't they? This construction and putting it in the end, it does something, but I don't know what it does.
a tag question.
You can
Jason,
put
you
it
wanna talk about
anywhere
tag
you like in
questions?
there, can't you? So you could say, wouldn't it be a good idea to have extra day off every week? The answer is probably going to be yes. So they're called yes tags. So you can load yes tags and you can load no tags. It's useful to do. You can put them wherever you like. So at the end, lots of people put them at the end, but you could put them at the beginning, or you could even put them in the middle. It depends on what you want to achieve and how you want to do it. Some people, if they're looking for them, will look on the end, but they won't look at the beginning or the middle. So you can sneak them in quite easily there.
Is it not is a very good one because it predefines people. People don't like to be forced to answer a yes question.
Yeah.
But if you say, is it not? Yeah. It gives them the option to say no. In that.
That's a really good idea, is it not? Yeah, brilliant idea.
Exactly.
Part of that, of course, is the fact that you can't really do a not anyway. So
The other thing it does, especially if you've said something that's quite lengthy, you've been talking for like 20 seconds or something, and then you put a question at the end, doesn't it? Something like that. It makes them kind of forget most of what you said. And then they just focus on the last bit.
Absolutely.
There isn't, especially
all the stuff you're talking about.
If you use that kind of language that Jason was saying before about you put the descriptor before it, just what it describes, instead of saying like the dog that had 3 legs that was painted blue, you say the blue 3-legged dog, right? If you start putting things in front, the descriptions in front, and speak for a while, and then you do a tag question at the end, it's kind of hypnotic, and they'll get like a spontaneous amnesia, forget what you said, but they'll still understand. So it's not that they don't forget the meaning of what you said, but if you ask them to repeat what you said, they won't be able to do it.
So the message is in, but the wording is lost.
Yeah, the message goes in, but they don't remember what you said. So as long as they've had the message, but then they've got the question at the end, right? Then they're likely to either just answer that and kind of forget the rest, even though they know what was said on some level.
Most of our language is chosen unconsciously. We don't actually think about the words we use most of the time. And you can't generally repeat a phrase back again, wrote, word for word. I mean, I could ask Elijah, what did you just say 5 seconds ago? Repeat that to me verbatim.
We can't do it.
I'll do it.
As you find
He's got an idea, he's got a gist, but you couldn't do it.
Yeah, I know the point I was trying to make, and I could say it similarly, but I probably couldn't say it word for word. No way.
But if whatever you said was an epiphany for somebody, they can quote you word by word, I bet.
Because there's emotion.
Yeah.
Emotion makes it stick to memory.
Yes. That was my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may not remember because it was one of your stories and your goal is elsewhere, but because the light bulb for them was in this very moment, it's like straight in the heart.
They remember that part. They might remember different parts of the part that I remember. Yeah. That's very common. And that goes back to the fact is, as much as you talk about like influence and planting seeds and mind reads and all this stuff, like you can never know what's going on inside someone else's head.
Yes, no idea.
So like Alan, for instance, how many people you had in this room, Alan, when you managed to deliver this, let's make peace and go somewhere?
4.
Four.
Yeah.
Am I correct? If he will pay attention to the body language, to the facial expressions, and he will notice that, let's say, his boss or whoever it was, just one person, really, really, really reacted positively to certain arguments, like let's respect each other. That the respect was this magic word, they just woke up and yeah, let's do it. If you will talk to this person in a different circumstances and talk about respect or bring respect to the equation, I believe it will work because he just elicited some kind of value, isn't it? This is how it works.
Yeah, it's possible. Although, you know, remembering each and every person's hot words is kind of difficult, you know.
Yeah, but if it's
much
his
easier
boss, if it's his
Yeah,
boss,
yeah. I
and
mean,
he's going
like, you
for a
remember
raise, it's
some,
going to be useful.
you know, you remember some, but you know, you might not remember everybody's. It's a lot of work to do on your own. It's quite taxing on your own brain as well, the amount of attention you have to pay. But it's worth it if you can, and you can do shortcuts as well, right? So like let's say you said the same thing in 2 different ways. One was a positive way and one was a negative way. Now you see the way I'm gesturing, right? One was a positive way and one was a negative way. And you say like, oh well, we all want this software to work and we all want it to be completed on time, and we don't want to have to waste any more money on this project, right? We don't want to waste time. We do want to get this done in a professional way so we can deliver to our clients, right? Now, what I've done there is I've done 2 or 3 different things positive on this side and 2 or 3 different things negative on this side with my gesture. And then what can happen is in the future, if you want to kind of disregard something, all you have to do is just, because they know the negative stuff's on this side and the positives on they might not have clocked onto it consciously, but they will know. And if
But they
you
will pick up on it.
well, I would sooner pay attention to tracking those kinds of things. Like you would kind of track people's hot words as well, but I'd pay more attention to what I'm doing. And you know, if the hot word is really relevant, then of course you would use it then, but the likelihood that I remember the same hot word next time is probably less so. I'd probably just elicit and get a fresh hot word in that context. And maybe in that context, at some point, I might be reminded by my brain, like, oh yeah, he did something when I talked about respect. So I might just throw it in. But it's not like I wouldn't demand it of myself because it's a lot to do. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And you're right about another thing. I can't remember what I said. You know, now afterwards I had I know roughly the kind of things I said, but I can't remember what words I used exactly.
Well, that's the right way to be. If you can
It's the right
remember
way to
the
be.
structure of what you...
Because it's much more organic.
Yeah, of course it is.
Right? It's much more organic, it's much more natural.
Otherwise, you live
Better to be that way.
the script.
If you're always like calculated, people can sense it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you have to be genuine in your communication. Yeah.
Is that analog marking, Jason, that Elijah was just doing with his hand
He's
gesture?
using spatial. And yeah, you can do both. He's doing
Spatial
analog mark
anchors.
and he's doing spatial anchors as well. So this and this is good. This is bad. This is a spatial anchor. But your tonality can be analog marking.
Okay, so that's when you're doing your embedded commands and all that sort of thing. Is that
Yeah, that's analog marking.
Yeah.
So we need you all to work harder this week because, you know, the bit work harder this week was slightly different tonality you may have picked up. It's only got to be a tiny amount. Yeah, and then that bit, sometimes you put a pause between front and back of that. So it just sits for a second, a split second before you carry on. That's when you mark things out analog.
Okay. But if you speak,
It's super subtle. It's super subtle.
It
In the beginning, it's when you're practicing, you know, you can lay it on a bit thick and just for the sake of practice. But as time goes on, you can start to, you know, smooth it out a little bit.
Yeah.
Your voice is very, your analog marking when you do trance work, Elijah, is very good. You know,
So I use rhythm a lot.
yeah.
Rhythm for me is it's something that a lot of people are sleeping on. Do you know what I mean? A lot of the professionals out there are kind of sleeping on this idea of using rhythm, because it's so easy to put people in trance just by having a rhythm in the way you speak. So, you know, if I say the fault, I'm going to say something in rhythm now, and just notice whatever you notice, and I'm going to ask you something about it afterwards, right? So I want you guys to begin to think that as you speak, your words could keep some sort of time, like in an unspoken rhythm, almost in a sense that you would pause at a regular interval and really start to get a rhythm going with what you're saying. Because when you speak this way, what happens is the people who are listening will just begin to go inside and start to drift. It has a very lovely lullaby effect. Do you know what I mean? Now, listen to that and notice how that makes you feel, versus if I say, now, if you start talking in rhythm and you pause regularly with the people that are listening, they'll begin to go inside, and it will have this kind of lullaby effect with what you're saying. Right? Which one's easier to listen to?
No, the first one.
And it's not even close. It's like massive, right? So the other thing that's really cool, I'm going to do it again now. So the other thing that's really cool is that when you pause, you can begin to use embedded commands right between the sentences, or rather the pauses, so that you can begin to start telling people what to do almost directly. And they might have no idea what's happening, because as they're listening to what you're saying, they'll be picking it up on a completely different level. And so you can begin to communicate with much more authority, can't you, when you start using rhythm? It's like, time out, I'm going to stop, right? But it's like super, super, super powerful and super, super, super simple, right? And the way I practiced it, the way I learned it, is I got a metronome, right? You can go on the App Store on your phone and go on Google Play, go on Apple's App Store, whatever, and you can download a free metronome app, right? And what I would do is I would set it at about 45 beats a minute, which is really slow. It's going to be like tick, 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 tick. And what you do is you kind of prop your phone up on a stand or something, and you watch it on the screen going tick, tick, tick. And you just try to talk and pause when it ticks, right? That's all you do. You just watch it tick and try and pause every time it ticks, right? Or regularly, the way you can, right? And then what I do, so what you've done is by watching the tick, you've trained yourself visually to 45 beats a minute, right? Then you turn your phone around, and so you can't see it, but you just hear the tick. And it goes tick, 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 and you try and speak that way. Like it takes several days, if not weeks, to learn this, right? But practice after practice, so you kind of just hearing the tick, right? And so you auditorily conditioning yourself to 45 beats a minute, right? Then what you do is you put headphones in, and you get your phone and thing, and you walk down the street, and you try and take a step on every, so you go tick, 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 and so you're walking really slow. It's really hard to do, especially when across the street and like there's a car coming in the distance and you've got to keep a certain pace, right? It's hard. But what you end up doing by repeating it with the visual for several days, and then with just the sound several days, and then with walking along to it several days, is you will tune your body to be able to go into this sort of slow motion where you can just pause and begin to say things that affect the people that are listening in ways that you might not have thought of before. And it's so easy to begin to step into that mode and start to have this effect where people really want to listen to you when you're speaking. Do you see how I could just go right into it, come right back out of it, go right into, and it's so powerful, like so
like a
powerful.
lullaby.
Excuse me?
Because
It's like a lullaby.
It's like a lullaby. It just makes people drift. They just start
like-
drifting in the brain.
it's I can see a similarity with poetry and music, and both are going really deep, and they can connect with emotions. So this rhythm is almost like subconsciously, oh, that's something I'm supposed to take deep.
Yep. It's so under the radar as well. Like, you might think sitting here listening to me that, oh, if I try and do that with someone, they're going to catch me. No way. Never in a million years. They just find it more enjoyable to listen to you. It's unbelievable, right?
People that know you will notice.
People that know you very well, like, so my brothers, do you know what I mean? Or my best friend that I've known since secondary school, I've known him 25 years, right? The moment you try and do that, they'll be like, what are you trying to pull? Right? Because they know you very well. But the moment, even like your work colleagues, like, I've worked with these people for 3 years, they can't pick up on it. They've got no clue. No way. It's super good. And loads and loads of people are sleeping on this skill. Learn to use rhythm, folks. It'll make you a very powerful communicator. It really will. Because what it does, the other thing it does, because you're pausing like that, it gives the other people an opportunity to catch up with what you just said, right? And so you're less likely to lose them when you're conveying an idea, because you've given them time to keep up with what's being said. Do you understand? It's really, really strong. Really, really, really strong. I recommend it to everyone.
And if you think where to put the pause, then you keep them hanging and being curious what's going to come next.
Right. And it also, that's correct. Absolutely what you said. And also it opens the door for more of that ambiguity that Jason was saying before about, look at what was it about the watch, the ship? What was the thing about the watch on your wrist and the ship or something, Jason? That you said?
Absolutely.
What was it?
I bought a new watch as the ship sails out of the harbour.
Right. So I bought a new watch as the ship sails out the harbour. With the pause, it spins people's brains.
Yeah.
Right. So I could say pauses are a great way to do this, would be to get that metronome app that I was talking about, something that you might learn soon. You'll be doing this yourself. Will you not? It's kind of trippy. It's kind of hypnotic, but at the same time, no one can really disagree with it. Everyone's going, yeah, I will be doing it soon. It's really cool. It's really, really cool stuff. But that's kind of, it's
they will listen.
Sorry, Magdalena, again, please.
I said they will listen. You will keep them interested.
Yep. They want, you see people like, I literally saw Alan go like this. He leaned in. He just went like that.
Yeah.
And that says to me, he's listening.
Because if somebody's speed is too much for somebody, if you're a teacher, you're explaining something to me, but I cannot catch up. you lost me anyway.
So as a
But
general rule,
in this way, you're just leading me step after step after step after step. You keep me hanging, and I'm like, oh, okay. I am just like listening to the music. I'm in it.
Mhm, mhm.
Oh, I love this. This sounds exactly like the kind of thing that would work for customer training, especially on Microsoft Teams. You know, it's all online, so much of it depends on the listening. And if
Right.
Yeah.
you get that rhythm there, you'd have them transfixed.
Oh,
Instead of imagining that they're looking at their phones and not telling you that the computer's not even switched on or whatever, you know.
what I
Have
would
you ever
say
been on a
to-
training which you left the training, Alan, and you just thought, oh God, that was boring.
It happens all the time, doesn't it? And especially now, once upon a time, I used to go to the customers and do the training, and then you could see, look around the room, see who was struggling or whatever. But now you have no clue. And so many people won't dare put their hands up or won't dare say anything, even if they're not getting it, you know. Online,
it's-
especially, people won't admit that they can't understand something.
Can you see them like you can see us when?
Often not, Giles. I mean, sometimes you can, but most of the time, the whole team's culture seems to have very much gone into not having your cam on now. Initially, last year when this kind of thing started, more people had the cam on, but now more and more people don't even switch the cam on.
You can ask them to switch it on, can't
Yeah.
you? You know, I don't know exactly how you would go about asking it, but you could say, well, I need to know that you're, you know, I need to know that to know that you're with me and that I'm not sending you to sleep. So could you?
Yeah.
Would you mind?
So the way
turning your
you do
camera
that
on?
is you link it to their outcome, right? So
Yeah.
what's their outcome? Their outcome is to understand something, right? So you say, okay, it'll be really helpful. It will be much easier for me to help you understand if I could see you. And you don't have to turn. And I would always throw this one in. It's like a throwaway that I do all the time. You don't have to. But if you want to really get this and have me really help you a lot, it's easier for me if I can see face to face the other people.
Yeah.
So to the, you know, and then you link it with there's this phrase, to the extent, right? So when you start saying
I like that. I've heard that on a lot of people.
right, when you say to the extent, it really links it. So to the extent that you want better quality of training from me, you might consider turning on your camera, right? And that's it. You kind of, and then you don't mention it again. You just carry on. Yeah, and it's up to them now. If they didn't get the proper training, it's, you know, the responsibility is in their court. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, and that helps you. And when someone does turn the camera on, you can say thank you very much, you know, or just appreciate it, and that then sends a signal to all the others that haven't got the camera on, like, oh, he actually really does appreciate the camera being on, and that person is getting more help now, you know. And so I want to turn my camera on as well. And the moment you get 2 or 3, everyone else will come on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's about
Explain
getting the group on your side. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah,
about
social
asking them to lift their hand like David does many times? It would help as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you could ask. So how many people think that this is just revision for them? Yeah. Or how many people
And
is this completely
this is
brand new?
another reason for the
Right?
camera,
You
because
kind
then
of get the interaction going a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
Show of hands, how many people have got absolutely no clue what I'm talking about? That's okay. It means you're in the right place.
Yes.
We're going to go through it. Blah, 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 blah. Right? So you kind of, you're always building people up. Never tear people down. Always build them up. Do you know what I mean? Right? Because every question they ask you say, "Oh, thank you for that. That's a very intelligent question." And it gave me the opportunity to talk about this other thing, which I was going to talk about tomorrow anyway. But now that we're here, we'll cover it. So you're ahead of the game, actually. And you just, these little comments always building people up, and they'll want to interact with you. They'll want to engage with you. You know, that's kind of how, especially when you're teaching or presenting, I think that it's very important, because it just gives people, you know, the freedom,
feeling of
to
being
kind of, you know,
included
they
and
feel
important.
important, they're included, you know, and if you can make a mistake and laugh at your own mistake, that kind of frees people as well. Do you know what I mean? Oh, boom, silly me, and whatever, right? So you know, it makes everybody think, oh, it's all right. You know, he's fumbling himself. Do you know what I mean? I don't have to be perfect. Yeah, because that's what it is. Why don't they put that? Why won't they put their hands up, or why won't they turn the camera on? Is there, they don't want to look silly. Yeah, it comes
Oh,
back
no,
to that.
absolutely.
It
Yeah.
comes back to that whole thing I was saying about tribal and being outcast and all. Do you know what I mean? That's the same. It's the same fear, in it, the social fear of not being accepted. But once you've got to tear that down and make everybody feel welcome. Do you know what I mean? That's what it is.
And I think it's another thing for me would be, if this guy is really into teaching me something, and I can feel that it's important to him to get to me and pass this valuable information, whatever it is, I'm going to make sure that I will listen to him, because he cares and he's doing it for me. So it has value. But if somebody is just packing the words into it, okay, we have half an hour, so I'm going to tell you paragraph 2, paragraph 3, da 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 da. I'm just like, oh God, when is going to end? But if I can feel from him that he is invested in helping me, I'm not going to walk away. Well, not easily. And he becomes the best teacher in the world.
Yeah.
It's excitement, isn't it? If you can generate a feeling of excitement and curiosity and playfulness in your own mind as you connect with your audience, they will pick up on your mirror neurons, and they'll automatically feel that, and it will strengthen the it will strengthen the feeling of trust and diffuse any awkwardness that they might feel by when they're not getting something. You know, if we
And the other
start,
thing is, if you don't know, just ask. You know, is there anything in particular that's a sticking point for you? Right? Is anything that is like, of all the stuff we talked about, is there anything that you want to revisit and go over because you're not quite sure? And that gives them license then to say, well, actually, yes, there is. You know, right? Or you could ask them, well, what was it? You know, I don't know what kind of meetings you're doing, but just as a general example, right? You would say, well, what was it that brought you to today's presentation? What were you hoping to get out of it? Right? Once you know their outcome, yeah, then you can start in, you know, at various points when it seems appropriate to then put that to the extent thing in. So then say like, oh, I came here because I wanted to learn how to set up a network across my, you know, home or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so you start talking about maybe something and something else, but then you get into something a bit technical, and you say, well, to the extent that you can get this down, setting up a network is going to be easy. And suddenly that person's going to be in. They're going to be like, oh, this is the part I need to pay attention to, right? Because that's my goal. And so you can start linking things to their outcomes. Do you know what I mean? And that drives them forward because they want their outcome.
you could even tell them a story about a group of delegates that you had a few weeks ago, and that were, you know, that didn't want to turn their cameras on, and that was until they realized, until I explained to them that they learned so much more. And as they begin, you know, one by one, as all the cameras went off, that, you know, they began to realize that they could engage far better, and they really did learn more because they could just put their arms up and answer questions and things like that in a more natural sort of fashion. I mean, just craft your own little story.
Yep.
It doesn't even have to be you. You can say, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day that's a trainer, and she was saying that people always get so much more value out of the training when the when the camera's turned on, something like that. Her students said they really prefer to interact with her. And then it's not about you, is it? It's about someone else then. So
Yeah.
I do on my meetings, when I send out the invitations for my meetings, I always write, this is an interactive workshop style event, and so having a working microphone is essential. Video is recommended, and then in brackets, but optional, right?
Yeah, I like that actually.
So when you put that out in the invitation that goes out, right, it tells, okay, so the microphone is essential, which everyone's got a microphone anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? But then it says video is recommended, and then it says, but it's optional in brackets. So they've still got the option. They still feel like they've got the choice. You're not forcing them, but recommended is another one of those words. Do you know what I mean? Like if they're going to a class to learn something, and something like, if you have a recommended reading list or a recommended, you know, you did this first, it's like doing the pre-work, isn't it, before you do the actual work, sort of thing. And so a lot of people will just switch it on because it was recommended, you know, because you're the professional, you're the authority, right?
Yeah.
So I always give people the option. You don't have to put a camera on, you know, but it helps. It doesn't help, doesn't always necessarily help just me. It does help me, but it also helps the other people. Like if we split into pairs and we start doing exercises, you're going to end up helping your partner by switching your camera on. Do you know what I mean? And it's just little things like that.
Anna Rose, have you got any questions? Are you even there at the moment?
I'm writing notes and digesting.
Eating biscuit.
No,
What
I don't
food
have-
did you eat that you're digesting.
digesting the information. So I have some ideas that are coming up while there's talking around how to help people to show up best in a space and be as receptive to learning as they can possibly be. And I also want to kind of like meet that with, we're right now in a kind of culture where people are often on Zoom more than they might choose to, and how we then might help them to like pace their Zooming so that not every session needs to be high intensity. But for the ones you want to get the most out of, you will be best served by showing up, by having your cameras on, you know, like prioritizing which Zooms you need to show up to in the way that you want to like be able to learn best. You know, it's kind of like a way to pace out, because some people spend like, you know, 9 till 5 on Zoom and then into the evenings as well. And Zoom fatigue is a thing. So like, I think a good way around that might be the idea of prioritizing where you want to show up best and where you want to learn the most.
That's a fantastic idea. Like that. I'm going to use that myself.
Thank you.
Interesting. I have no idea how to answer that question.
No, it was more just a thought, you know, like just to kind of share into the space. This is what was coming up for me while you were all talking. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And then there's this other thing that might be a kind of like an obstacle, and then how to invite the obstacle into the idea of choosing to prioritize the Zooms that you want to show up in a best possible learning space for.
Is there something you could apply linguistic alchemy to, Elijah?
I don't know about that. But I do like the idea of prioritizing, because it's sort of, in a way, it's like a double bind, right? You know, some of the Zooms you're going to have your camera on, some of the Zooms you're going to have your camera off, but by choosing and planning ahead which ones are most important to you, then you can be assured that you are well rested for those times when you need to pay the most attention and have it on, right? And so that's, in a way, it's sort of, it's coming back to those double binds, right? That it's, you know, like, oh, do you want to clean your room before dinner or afterwards? They're still going to clean the room, right? But it's like an illusion of choice. In the same way, they're still going to show up to the Zooms, but now by giving them the suggestion that prioritizing might be really good so you don't get fatigue, then they're much more likely to invest some effort in doing it in a more productive way. And I really like that. It's a fantastic idea. So thank you for that.
You're
I'm
welcome.
definitely going to be using that.
Please feel free. It's all just generative space, like what you people are sharing is, you know, I'm sharing my thing into it, and it's generative and like yum 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 yum.
Yeah.
More digested.
Thank you, Jason.
More digesting. Yeah, that's what you said, right? Yeah. Very good. Very good.
We're not composting tonight.
And that comes after the digesting drugs.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Too much information.
It's process and sequence.
So which process are we in now, and where would we like to go? We've talked about, Jason's given us a great description of the Metamodel and the Milton model. We've had some good examples. Magdalena's given us a great short little anecdote, which was really cool. And
With the ambiguity,
yeah,
we can talk about like an introduction, if you like, to linguistic alchemy, but really, well, the idea is that you use parts, you break the problem down into its base elements and use those same base elements to create its solution. That's the whole idea, because that's what alchemy is, right? Alchemy is sort of the idea of turning sort of lead into gold or whatever it is, right? It's the base elements of the material and turning it into, transmuting it, they say, into something else. So John Overdurf, one of my teachers, my mentors, one of my heroes, he came up with this idea of linguistic alchemy, and it's all about breaking things down into their base elements, and then using the same, so the solution comes from the problem itself, if you know what I mean, right? I know I don't have an example to give you. It's much more like, does anybody have something they would like to change? We could do like a demo or something, and then that would be much easier for me, because I do it pretty much unconsciously at this point. And so breaking down an example, either we need to have like a video that I can sort of pause and say, well, did you see what he did there? Did you see what he did there? Or we need to have a live example where I could pause in between and say, okay, well, this is why I asked that question. And have you noticed this? Have you noticed that? And sort of teach it that way. So does anybody have something they would like to shift? Giles?
I think I'm going to go with the age-old one, which is procrastination and almost fear of uncertainty, I suppose. And
okay, we'll pick one. Is it procrastination, or is it a fear of uncertainty?
Well, I'm not sure that they're entirely separate from one another, but
okay, so pick one to start with.
Well, let's start with procrastination.
All right. And how do you know that you procrastinate?
Because there are things that I should be doing that I don't do. Lots of things.
Okay. So time out. Giles, is it all right if I time out from time to time? I'm going to be talking to you, and we'll get you some resolution on this, I promise. But also I'd like to talk to the group and sort of bring in and bring awareness to what's happening and where we are in the process and how we're using some of the things already that Jason's been talking about. So already procrastination, can't put it in a wheelbarrow, don't really know what he means, haven't really got a clue what he's talking about, right? And so I asked this, how do you know that you're procrastinating, right? So then he's told me that there's a lot of things that he should be doing that he's not doing, right? Now I'm already in my brain, I'm already sort of, okay, he's got the word should, right? So that's like one of those modal operators of necessity, right? It's a generalization sort of thing there that, oh, I should be this and I should be that. So maybe that's something we'll explore. And there's also Giles, you can listen to this as well while I talk to the rest of them, I don't mind, right? And also this idea of there's something needs to get done that's not getting done, so there must be some sort of outcome. That's also what I'm thinking, right? So Giles, when you say there are things that you should be doing that are not getting done, how do you know that they're not getting done?
Because they're staring me in the face, and
They're staring you in the face.
consciously ignored them.
You've consciously ignored them. They're staring you in the face. Okay. And okay, that's interesting. When something's staring you in the face, but you consciously ignore it, what happens next?
I get an icky feeling.
You get an icky feeling. Okay. Right. And where do you feel the icky feeling?
In my solar plexus.
Solar plexus. Okay. Right. So what's not icky about staring a solution in the face instead of a problem? That's right. What's happening right now?
I'm a little confused.
You're a little confused. That's right. You are a little bit confused. But as you said, you were a little bit confused. You were smiling. Isn't that well? How do you feel about that? That even though you were confused, you were smiling at the same time. How do you feel about those two things happening at the same time?
I've got to say, I feel good.
You feel good. Okay. And when you feel good, what's that like?
It just feels, well, that feeling in the solar plexus is gone, and I feel back into a state of happiness, comfort, and acceptance.
That's very good. So when you're comfortable and you have acceptance and happiness, what's staring you in the face then?
Opportunity.
Opportunity, right? And if you have opportunity, what would you do?
Take action.
Oh, so you're not procrastinating anymore. That's interesting. That's very good. That's a very good reaction. I like that. Laughing is generally a good sign. So what's happening right now as you were laughing?
I'm spinning.
You're spinning. In a good spinning or a bad spinning?
It's just spinning. It's not, but it's kind of, there's all kinds of things going on, and I can't really describe it with words. What's going on? There is something.
So as you're spinning, what's something that you're noticing that you want to get done? Procrastinating, I mean. So that you're not doing that anymore and spinning towards something you like to get those things done even more quickly than you were. That's very good. What's happening right now?
I really don't know.
You really don't know. And again, there's the laughing, right? And the smiling. So how do you feel about laughing and smiling and yet not knowing?
Feels good.
It feels good to not know or to not have to know.
Both, maybe.
Both. So when you realize that you can get your outcome without having to know how, what's that like?
Empowering.
It's empowering. So as you feel this empowering feeling, what do you notice?
But that icky feeling in my stomach has just gone, and I'm feeling more certain.
Okay.
Willingness to.
So you feel much more certain. And the icky
Not
feeling.
necessarily certain, but confident, I guess. And
Wait. Confident, you guess?
well, I feel more confident.
You said
I feel more certain in me.
at that time.
I feel more certain in myself. I don't feel more certain I'm going to get my outcome.
Oh, okay. So we're going to time out. Right. So we did quite a lot there. We started with staring me in the face. That's a visual. That says to me it's a visual. Yeah. It's staring me in the face. Right. And I'm consciously avoiding it. Means he's not looking. It's like if it's staring at him, but he's avoiding it, it's like he's not making eye contact with it. Yeah. He won't look it back in the eye. He's just avoiding. Right. And then I said, well, what's that like? And he said something about icky feeling, solar plexus. That's when I did the mind spin question, which again, this kind of stuff, I don't really remember exactly what the question was. We'll have to watch the video replay, right? But it was something to the effect of what's not icky about staring a solution in the face instead of the problem, right? So I've just basically taken the words that he's given me, icky feeling, staring in the face, and I've used a not. I've jumbled it up in a different order, used a not to negate the bad thing, and then sent it back at him. So I said, what's not icky about what's staring in the face that's not the problem? Or something to that effect. I don't know exactly what I said, right? And then he went, and I said, well, what's happening now? He said, I'm confused, but he was smiling, right? So that's kind of when I just check with the body again. So how do you feel about that you're smiling, yet you say you're confused? He said, it feels good, right? So now we've got a good feeling to work with. And the whole idea is to get him, see, you can't tackle your problem if you feel shitty. That's a fact. If you feel low or weak or disempowered, you can't tackle your problem. But if you feel strong, confident, certain, which is where we're getting to now, right? Then you're much more likely to find the solution. Okay. Anybody have any questions for myself at this point? Yes, Magdalena?
When John said, or whoever for that matter will say, it's staring me in the face. For me, the representation, the picture representing this thing is big and in front of him.
Mhm.
Would it be useful to ask him to grab it, squeeze it, and push it away?
Can be, but it wasn't. It probably would be. Distance, generally speaking, is a good submodality to play with in terms of weakening the intensity of the feeling, right? So if you, as a general move, like if the picture's close and it's pretty bad, and if you move it further away, it's going to be less bad, right? Because it's not in your face, so to speak. But the reason I didn't do it was because we were doing the language demo, that's all. But yes, is the answer. It could be useful. Yes, it would be
But
useful.
would it affect the outcome? Because if he is dealing with this monster straight staring him in the face, would his experience of defeating the monster, wouldn't it be stronger than when
Well,
he
we would
pushed it
have to
away?
test it later. Yeah.
But just
So
just in theory, it sort of, will have more meaning for him.
So the idea would be that you would move it away and find some kind of positive resource or some positive state, right? You would
Mhm.
bring that state to the surface, so you get him feeling all positive and strong, but then you would bring it back close again and test it.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
If the feeling change, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But and it would be easier for him to tackle because he'd be feeling strong.
So linguistic alchemy is all about doing it with words and the elements he is giving you.
The idea is to be able to do it by asking questions, the same sort of maneuvers that you do in NLP, moving things away, changing pictures, changing sounds, to do the same thing through asking questions and language and make it look like it's not therapy.
Okay.
That's the whole idea. So it doesn't look like therapy. That way you can get away with doing it in corporate. Right?
So it's almost like you're saying to your client, before we start a session, what would you like to work on today? And Giles will go, procrastination. And all you're doing before the session starts.
Yeah, but you're doing the session.
Yeah.
They think it hasn't started, but it's already
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Right. So by the time you get to the trance, yeah, most of the heavy lifting is already done. Yeah.
It was very natural. I would
And
definitely.
he is relaxed because it's not session yet. We didn't even start
We're
yet.
we're not doing therapy. We're just
Yeah.
having a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're
Okay.
just having a conversation.
Yeah.
But actually what we're doing, it's like, when you get if you ever bake like a lasagna or something, right? And you get like the burnt cheese on the dish, right? You don't just put it straight in the dishwasher. You put some warm water and some soap and you let it soak for a bit. It just loosens it up. What we're doing is we're soaking him and letting him loosen up a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. The other thing I will say, and I did notice you said this, you said, what do you want to work on today? I would never use that phrase, ever, ever, ever. The word you want to use is through, because there's a presupposition there. So what do you want to work through today? That presupposes that we're going to finish it and we're going to get it done. If we work on something, it might not get
presupposes failure, doesn't
right.
it?
So well, it presupposes like
okay.
positive and negative both. But if you say, what would you like to work through today? That presupposes that we're gonna get it. Yeah. So I would just be
Can I say something like, what would you like to take out of the way today? Which means get it sorted and
but do you know if that necessarily that something is in the way, or have you just created something in the way even though there wasn't something in the way?
Okay, so working through something gives you an open gate to
it's an
finish
idea
with it,
because through means to the other side.
Okay.
Yeah. So whether it's in the way or whether it's something inside or whether it's outside, but through implies getting to the other end of it, having resolution.
But it's all about thinking the words through, the words you're using, and look at the like intensity they have, like gosh.
Yeah. Different people will have different reactions to different words. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like if I say to you, Magdalena, I think you're mistaken. As I say, Magdalena, I think you're wrong. This is if I say, Magdalena, I think you're lying.
Oh,
there's very different levels of intensity, right, in the word.
We'll
but
have
there are
something
other people,
to go through.
But there are some people who they will be affected by it, the scale, but not necessarily to the same extent. Yeah. And so you're always kind of watching for the non-verbal response that you get. Yeah. because what they say is almost irrelevant, but how their body reacts is relevant. So when I said, Magdalena, you're lying, before you even said, oh, you went like this. Oh, I don't know about that kind of, right?
It's
So
it's a big thing.
that whole body motion is it's pulling back, right? So it means, oh, I've lost her now, right? So you're always watching for the non-verbal response.
So
You're always
when
watching for what is
Giles,
their body doing.
so when Giles went inside and just almost bursted with laughter,
Mhm.
it's
That's
a
when I said,
signal
that's
that
right.
he's comfortable with everything which he's feeling inside, and
That he
he's
was
feeling the
okay with
change.
not knowing.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he said, I don't know, but he was laughing, which
yeah,
means, which is what I picked up on. And I said, oh, so what's it like when you don't know and you don't even have to know? And that's when he said, oh, it's empowering. And he did
Yeah.
this motion, it's empowering,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's the strong stuff. That's what we want to get to bring him. Like, we're gonna have to amp it up again now, because obviously we had a quite a lengthy time out, so we kind of lost the state. We'll have to get it back,
Yeah,
right?
I think
But we're
It
gonna
was
have to
quite
get
visceral.
a very powerful state, and we're gonna have to get him to face the problem when he's in a very powerful positive state, because then he will do something different than what he has been doing when he was feeling disempowered in front of the problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it all comes down to the state. The state is the most important. Yeah. How you doing, Giles?
I'm good. I'm not as empowered as I was a few minutes ago, but
Well, I mean,
I'm
as you
still
are
feeling
right,
pretty good.
as you are right now, right? As you are right now in this moment at what time is it? 10:20 p.m. Right? What's the problem now?
It's no problem.
So, I mean, you said something about procrastinating, right? Or what was the other one? Procrastinating and on dealing with uncertainty. When you think about those now,
Fear of uncertainty.
yeah, when you think about those now, what happens?
It's the intensity has gone.
The intensity is gone.
Yeah. I don't have those blissful feelings that I had when you did the first intervention, but I don't have, I also don't have that feeling of that icky feeling in my.
And what about that thing that was staring you in the face?
It's still staring me in the face, but it's not bothering me.
Oh, it's not bothering you?
Yeah.
So is it okay to forget about something if it's not bothering you?
Not this one.
Not this one. Okay. So there's something important about this one.
That I have to take action on. Oh yeah. It's
Oh
pretty.
yeah. Okay. So we're certain about that.
Yeah.
There's no uncertainty there.
No uncertainty
Oh,
whatsoever.
so you know what it's like to have no uncertainty, even though you're afraid of uncertainty? Because certainly that would be the right way to think about it. What's happening now, Giles?
I don't know.
That's right. You don't know. Are you sure that you don't know?
I'm certain enough to be uncertain.
You're certain enough to be uncertain. So as you think about this thing staring me in the face and you're certain enough to be uncertain, then what happens?
Just spin out.
What's the other things that could be solutions or something else that are also staring you in the face that you haven't yet noticed? What's happening now?
my little mind is going round and round and round, looking for things that I hadn't noticed before, things that are kind of commanding my universe into existence.
Okay.
Background.
So what would happen if you did the thing that's staring you in the face?
Well, what would happen would be I would free up emotional resources that I could better use on doing things that are more important to.
So what's even more important that you need emotional resources for?
The things that bring me joy and pleasure.
If those things are more important, can you not put the resources there now?
Well, I have been putting to some extent. And
Oh, is that the you have been doing that and ignoring the thing that's staring you in the face?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to understand a little bit more now. Thank you for that clarification. So what would happen? So we know that if you did do the thing that was staring you in the face, then you would free up emotional resources that would allow you to focus on other things that bring you more joy.
Yeah, so I could experience even more pleasure than I normally do.
Excellent. Okay. And what would happen if you didn't do the thing that's staring you in the face?
I'll experience more pain and things will.
How can you be sure that that's the outcome that will happen? How do you know that?
Because there are legal proceedings involved in it.
Okay. And legal proceedings never have multiple outcomes?
There are lots of potential outcomes, but none of them are really good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, are all of them really bad?
Well, that depends on how you view that. That depends on whether I view it as a problem or an opportunity.
Okay. So you said you would experience more pain, but now I would say that that's not a certainty, rather just a potential, because there are ways that you said yourself just now of looking at things as an opportunity rather than a consequence or something.
The consequences, the consequences. I mean, this is something of a decision that, or maybe it's something. I'll level with you. Someone has petitioned my bankruptcy at the moment, and I've got a hearing on the 22nd of February about this. I racked up a load of debt in the around about 2013, 2014 time, and that debt was sold on sold on by the banks to various debt management companies, and one of them has decided that that they want to bankrupt me for it, and so it could be a problem in as much that ultimately I will lose my property here. Since I don't particularly want to be living in this particular property, I'm not sure that would be so much of a problem, because I'd be going into rented accommodation. And on the positive side of it is it costs £600 for the fees to declare yourself bankrupt, and the fact that this creditor is willing to pay the fee to make me bankrupt saves me saves me £600, so that I don't have to do it myself. And it also entitles me to free legal help as well, because it involves me potentially losing my home. So I have basically a blank checkbook for legal fees on this now. So the outcome is far from certain on this, and it may well end up with a different outcome other than bankruptcy. But this document, which is quite literally staring me in the face here now, you know, as much as I'd like to shrink it down to the size of a postage stamp, throw it away in the bin, I can't really do anything about it. But I can take the action and go and pick up the phone and speak to a solicitor about it.
So here's my question, because we started off with procrastination. So, and you just said now that you can, right? In the beginning, you said you should. And just now you said you can, right? And so what, if anything, is different now from when we started? In terms of the procrastination, I mean, and the action taking.
I feel more certain and confident within myself, and that feeling that visceral feeling that I had in my solar plexus has gone.
Okay,
that has gone. That, you know, I'm not, you know, I haven't got that relief, that giggly feeling that I had as you did the primary.
Do we want more of that one?
Well, if you can make me feel like that, that would be wonderful. Yes, please.
Yes, please. Okay, so what was it like for you when you did that?
It was very liberating and empowering, and
How so?
I don't know. I just feel a vibration, and I can also almost see colours. Things just seem brighter. Everything around me, you know, visually brighter, crisper.
Mm.
You know, the imagery in my mind is much brighter.
As you consider that the imagery in your mind was brighter, right? What's the feeling you hadn't noticed when you were noticing the brightness?
Pleasure.
Pleasure. And what happened? Now, I don't know if that pleasure will first grow stronger, or if it will intensify, or maybe it'll move to another part of your body. But you know which way it goes. Do you not?
Yeah.
Which way does it go?
It's flowing.
It's flowing. And as it begins to flow even more so, what can you notice about the brightness now?
It's even brighter.
It is even brighter, isn't it? And as you notice that and pay attention to it, what happens to the feeling?
It gets stronger and better.
It gets stronger and better. And how can you remember this feeling so that you can in the future recall it on demand? That's very good. Memorize it. If you don't know where to look, you look for the brightness. And when you see the brightness, you notice the feeling. And as the feeling starts to flow, you notice what happens to the brightness. And as it gets even brighter, again, I'm not sure whether that feeling will spread or intensify, or maybe you'll just be more aware of it now. That's right. You're laughing again. That's the symptom. That's very good. Do you guys see the change of color in his cheeks? You can't fake that. Yeah, you can't fake that. Right? But as you feel this now, how will you be able to memorize it?
Whoa.
so that you could bring it up again on demand. That's great. Very good. Even stronger. That's right. Very good. Very good. You're doing a wonderful job. Keep this up. And now consider how easy it would be to take just a tiny action, just to see what would happen next. Because you wouldn't know until you try, would you? What's one phone call? If the guy on the other end of the phone's an arsehole, you can phone a different solicitor.
I've got access to government funds in order to pay for the finest lawyer.
Wait, are you noticing solutions instead of problems now?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? That's right.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So remember, it's easy to enjoy finding resolution and flow when you're interested in finding out what you don't already know. Are you not?
I'm almost excited about this now.
That's interesting. That's very good. So we just time out there. How you feeling, Giles?
I'm feeling.
Right. Okay. And so what, as we are right now at 10:35, 15 minutes later, where's the problem now?
There isn't one. It's an opportunity.
Are you sure?
Yeah,
Really?
I'm really sure.
How do you know?
Because there is something that I can do.
Really?
Yeah, that can change the course of my life. And I didn't have access to this opportunity.
How do you know that?
Because these papers hadn't been served on me 2 weeks ago. So there's been, this, I no longer see this as a gift, but I no longer see this as a gift. There was a Freudian slip there. I no longer see this as a problem. I actually see this as a gift.
Are you sure?
Well, yes, it's this is like a check,
No.
I frame it. It's like a free check from the government for £20,000 worth of legal fees. How
Really?
lucky am I?
How lucky are you?
Yeah, £20,000 worth of public funds to be spent on defending my welfare.
Excellent. Okay, time out. Well, I think we're done, Giles. Right? That was the demo. So at the end, right, there's three phrases. Are you sure? Really? How do you know? And you can just repeat them. And every time you do, whatever the neural network that has been lit up in his brain that is proving to him that it's working, every time I ask any one of those three, he's going to have to repeat it internally. So I'm like, are you sure? And then he goes inside and yes, I am sure because really, and so we're just what we're doing is we're kind of strengthening that neural network by having him do repetitions instead of saying, oh, take that strong feeling and move the picture and do it. Instead of doing it that way, we're just going, really? And he does it again. And I say, are you sure? And he does it again. I say, how do you know? And he does it again, right? Internally. Because
by defending it, he is reinforcing it inside.
Yeah, he's growing.
It's his idea, and he's sure.
Because I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, well, yeah, because. So he's growing the roots more deeply, strongly.
Yeah.
Rather than me telling him, he's doing it himself, and that's what makes it strong, right? Because he's doing it for his reasons. He sees it as a gift now.
And this shift, Elijah, which you pay attention to, in the beginning you said I should, now you're saying I can.
Mhm.
What does it mean to you when you're working with a client? It means that they move
Well,
from
it went from
to
a necessity to a possibility.
okay.
In
thank
terms of what Jason was saying before about the modal operators, right? In general, in the bottom part of the diagram, he had two types of modal operators of necessity, which is should. I should do this thing. But should doesn't mean want. It means like pressure is being applied. But
So
then
I
he
have to. It would
switched.
be necessity as well.
Have to is necessity, right?
Yeah.
But when he went to I can do it now. Now he's in possibility because he's saying I can do it.
Yeah, by doing that, it took him from effect to
It
cause.
puts it, yeah, it takes him from being affected by this letter to now I've got this check and I can be the cause. So we've moved him from being at effect to being at cause. And when you're the cause, Giles, you're in control, aren't you?
Yeah.
Right?
Which
Because
means
you're
you're
the one who's
empowered.
causing the effect on the rest of the world. In essence, you are the creator, kind of coming back to what you were saying about you're the god of your own universe, mentally inside, right? You're the creator of your own world.
And it is empowering.
And that is
Isn't it?
empowering.
I like that.
And look at Giles. He's just about to start. Stop. Here we go.
Yeah.
Right. So there was some very obvious embedded suggestions in there, right? So I said things like oh, I don't know if you're gonna notice the feeling moving, or maybe it's gonna be more intensive, or maybe you'll just be more aware of it now. Like I did it really obviously, yeah. So it's just like, and he knew what I was doing, but it just makes it work better when he knows what's going on, right? So those kinds of things, I was like, be more aware of it now. Like memorize this feeling so you can call it back on demand. And like these are just very direct suggestions, right? Do you see it? Right? Do you see the reaction? He's
Yeah.
got it. It's like LinkedIn now. Yeah, it's an unconscious response. He just like it goes red and he starts laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks
So
for
we've
that.
got we've done enough repetitions secretly without really calling attention to the fact that we're doing repetitions, but we've done enough that it's now as automatic as the problem used to be. Yeah.
You're still on.
That's the first time someone has ever successfully set an anchor inside of me like that, or
Well, you said it inside yourself.
well, sure, but you were the one that generated.
I just hit the tennis ball back. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You send it to me, I just hit it back.
No, no.
You can see Jason. Jason was, if you watch the replay of this, you watch Jason's face as it's happening. Every time Giles gets a little bit closer to the outcome, Jason's like, he's got him now. He's got him now. Like,
I noticed.
right. So thank you for playing with me. If anybody has any questions, right, it really comes down to here's the thing, right? Confusion is gold. Confusion's magic.
This is why ambiguities are so powerful.
Right. Those weird things that I'm saying, or what are the other things that are also staring you in the face that you hadn't paid attention to? What? Suddenly it sends his brain somewhere else.
Yeah.
And there is because confusion, like there are three phrases, and I use them all interchangeably. One is confusion, one is not knowing, and one is uncertainty. So uncertainty, confusion, and not knowing, for me, they are all interchangeable, and I use all three words to mean the same, three phrases to mean the same thing. So sometimes the moment he says, I'll say, what's happening now? And he'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, okay, we're in confusion now. Okay. The thing about confusion is it's like a halfway house. It's like they landed on the fence. They didn't go back to the negative, but they didn't end up in something positive. So you just got to give them a little nudge because they're in the middle, right? So when you get to, oh, I don't know, you say like, oh, well, what would you rather have? Yeah, and that just sends, it's like a little nudge to the positive side. Yeah, and say, well, I'd rather be much more confident and I'd rather be, right? And then suddenly, oh, well, what's that like when you are that way now? And that's a suggestion, right? You are that way now. Right? And you can even disguise it by saying, as you think about it. So you can say, like, what's that like when you are that way now, as you think about it? Right? When you say it like that, it's very under the radar. It's a suggestion saying you are that way now, but it's also you are that way now as you think about it. Right? So it's kind of disguised.
Can I
And
just
it's
slow
just,
down and say it again, please, Elijah?
what's it like when you are that way now as you think about it?
Or as that happens.
You see, with that little pause on the now, and as you think about it, right, it just kind of disguises the you are that way now, which is a command, right?
And as you think about it, amplifies it, doesn't it?
Well, it might. I don't know. Only you know.
Well, it certainly.
Okay. So confusion is a wonderful thing. When people don't know, see, most people don't like to not know. I can say this with some amount of certainty. Most people hate not knowing, right? However, all potential for everything that's good that hasn't happened yet exists in what you don't know. What you don't know will always be bigger than what you know. Even if you take everything you know and you're the most knowledgeable person in the world, there's still so much more that that knowledgeable person doesn't know. And in order for him to find potential, like positive potential, it's on the other side of what he doesn't know. Because if it was some combination of things he already knew, it wouldn't be a true potential, a truly new potential. And that's what he needs. He needs a solution that's not all the things he's already thought of. Because if he was able to find it, he would have found it already, and he wouldn't be asking for help. The fact that he's asking for help says that he doesn't know where to find the solution, because the solution is not inside of what he already knows. It's on the other side of what he doesn't know.
I'm going to put that diagram that I put up earlier back up.
It's outside when you had the second one with the blue on the outside and the circle.
That one.
Oh, is it possible, Elijah, that like you gave us example of the keys which are in front of you, but you don't see them?
That negative hallucination. It's not that.
Yes.
It's
That
not. It's
somebody
not
actually.
that. It's that he's been looking for it inside this white circle, when
No.
actually it exists somewhere inside the blue box.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like riding west to find a sunrise.
Yeah.
You're never going to find one. Just turn around, you'll find it's there.
Yeah, it's kind of like Einstein said, isn't it? You can never solve the problem with the same logic that created it.
Oh, an extended quote. How cheeky.
I know, very cheeky. And I wasn't even trying.
How do you feel about it, Elijah? Because what you said about this linguistic alchemy, that you taking the elements, you taking the problem, you stripping it to elements, and then you creating the solution using this element.
Right. So the solution was.
So what just Giles said about Einstein, that you cannot solve the problem with the same things which created it.
But it's not the same thinking. It's the same mechanism, because we're all human and we're all doing the same mechanism all the time anyway, which is those three mechanisms that Jason talked about, which is deleting, distorting, and generalizing. It's just he was deleting and he was distorting what this paper means. He's got this paper that's staring him in the face, right? and he's distorting what it means. Now he's distorted it again, but in a different way, because he said, now I see it as a gift. So the meaning has
see,
changed,
okay.
right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
the mechanism is the same in terms of deleting, distorting, and generalizing, because that's just the mechanism of your nervous system, right?
Mhm.
And so, but the thinking and the conclusion that you reach is different,
Oh, I
Because it's
see.
in this different universe.
because it's not from inside, it's from the outside. It's from beyond what you know. Well, beyond what you know consciously.
Yeah.
Subconsciously, you know, but you can't access it because you're not in the right state. You're in the state of the problem and you're feeling shitty about the problem at one point, whenever you were, right? And so your vision of what you can perceive is limited by that negative state. But when we get him into a positive state that's even stronger in terms of intensity, so let's say the negative state was a 7 out of 10, was only when we got the positive one up to like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, then you ask the question, well, where's the problem now? And he said, well, there is no problem.
That really was quite a profound experience. You know, that intervention really worked.
It always works with any problem.
Oh,
We could see it work, Giles.
Did you see? I used two universals then. Always
I felt-
any problem. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Giles. I felt so guilty that you lost it. You know, when I started to ask Elijah about all this.
No, because you see,
No, he was like,
here's the
boy,
thing.
like,
Here's
I've
the
lost
thing,
it.
Magdalena.
It's gone now.
Here's the thing, right? Do you know what fractionation is?
Yeah. So it worked for him because
You know what fractionation is? So I'm actually using that as well, because the second time we get it, because the law of
it
fractionation
went deeper.
is going to be stronger.
It was
Absolutely.
stronger.
If we do it a third time, it's going to get even stronger, which is
Giles,
why I told
are
him
you
to
up for the
memorize
third
it.
time, Giles?
Which is why I told him to memorize it and do it again on his own, on demand, right? Because the next time he feels it, it'll go even stronger,
Look at his face. He's
right?
starting already. Yeah, it's on demand. Look.
That's the law of fractionation. But it's all disguised. Like now we finished the intervention, and we are 20 minutes later or whatever. Now I can talk about it quite openly. He's also a hypnotist. He understands, right? But at the time, I'm not bringing attention to the fact that, I'm going to break now and talk to the class. So we have a break of state. So I'm going to fractionate him. I'm not telling you guys that in the moment.
Yeah, because it
Yeah,
will spoil everything.
because it will spoil because we want
Yeah.
him to have the pop. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So-
quite nice being on the receiving end for a change.
Ta-da, on
I'm
demand.
glad you enjoyed it.
I really did, and I've
More
still
questions? Anybody?
Elijah, I'd love to know the name of the author of the person who you've most resonated with the linguistic alchemy.
His name is John Overdurf.
Thank you. Can you spell that for me?
Yeah, it's. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
Overdurf. So John Overdurf, right? And it's same. His name, all in lowercase, no spaces. .com. That's his website. JohnOverdurf.com.
Thank you.
He's generations. He's literally generations ahead of everybody else in terms of change work, therapy, anything. He's so far ahead in what he's teaching. It's unbelievable.
But what he's
He is
teaching,
really
is it a prerequisite if you taking his classes? Is it a prerequisite to have an LP? You don't have an LP.
Well, he
like,
will teach you a basic NLP if you don't have it. So you can start with that class if you don't have it. If you have it, then you can do his more advanced class immediately. Yeah. But if you don't have it, he does teach NLP, but it's not exactly NLP what he's teaching anymore. It's like an evolution of
got
NLP.
his own version of it.
He even calls it HNLP.
Is that for holistic?
Humanistic.
Humanistic.
Humanistic. It basically means to make everything much more smooth and less mechanical.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
I saw him working, so yeah, he is a smooth
Oh, he's
operator.
genius. The man's absolute genius. You know, like there's no way that any problem can, and he's even got me, but he's got me to a point where I believe that no problem can persist. Do you know what I mean? He's got me to a point where I'm convinced that there's no such thing as a problem which doesn't have the solution and that we can't get it.
It isn't. It can't be. I mean, if you go to,
Like once
it can
you're
only
in
be
this
a
blue
problem
bit,
if you draw this boundary.
once you're inside this blue bit, there's just so much possibility in what you hadn't considered and what you don't know that something will work, guaranteed.
It's only when you draw that circle there that there is a problem, isn't it? Everything, and everything we do, our entire map of the world is based on. Is based on.
See, here's the tricky thing is, we need circle, right? We need the circle because otherwise we'll go insane.
Yeah,
right? But you always remember that it's there, and that wherever you currently are now, in this particular moment. Remember the first time I came to one of these meetups, I talked about 20 minutes about the importance of being in now and staying present, right? This is a major thing, right? Wherever
This is
you
your
are
circle.
now, you are still in a circle. You're still inside some sort of box, right? And when you use these kind of languages or these kind of techniques to get out of the box, like we did in my class that one weekend as well, that kind of technique that spins you out of the box, but it only really keeps you there for a few seconds, because any longer than that and you'll just be like overwhelmed because there's just so much. So you kind of, it's almost like a microscopic 1 second, 2 second long trance where you go and you come back, you're like, well, what's happening now? You're like, oh, I feel empowered, or I'm not sure. Either they're going to say, I'm still at the problem, or they're going to say, I don't know, or they're going to say, I feel better. If they feel better, you're just going to increase the feeling, right? If they say they don't know, you're going to give them a nudge to a good feeling. And if they say, I'm still at the problem, then you're going to spin them up again, and they're going to come back down again. And again, they're going to tell you one of these three things.
It's literally forcing us to think outside at an unconscious level, outside of consensual reality, isn't it?
That's one way of putting it. I don't really want to put a label on it. You know,
well, yeah,
because the moment you put a label on it, you lose what it is.
Yeah, you stick another circle around it.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Another circle, right?
Point
So the whole idea is that you have what he calls it a void experience.
Yeah.
Right. And the void is, if you read or listen to Deepak Chopra, he will say that it's like the non-local field, the pure potentiality.
Field of pure potentiality.
Right. That's what it is. If you talk to the Chinese, they'll say that's the Tao.
Yeah.
Right. If you talk to Christians, they might say, oh, it's the Holy Spirit. Yeah. If you talk to a physicist, he'll say it's the non-local universe. Right. If you talk to a hypnotist, they might say it's collective unconscious. But the point is, it's the ultimate resource state.
It's the field of everything that could be or ever will be, isn't it?
Right? Because it's everything that is, everything that was, everything that will be, everything that never was, everything that can't be, and everything that never will be, all at the same time. Like, and it's like, it just bursts any problem. It can't not work. The question is, can you get someone to be uncertain enough to be unsure about their problem? Because if they're no longer sure about their problem, that's a way into something else, isn't it? They come to you and they're saying, I have this problem. Like if my this hand is a problem and this is my conscious mind, then they're coming to you like this, I have this problem. And what I'm saying is, if you say something that's confusing, their conscious mind's going to go, what? And that's that loosening effect, that soaking effect, like I was saying about the dish. And once it loosens its grip and it's no longer sure that the problem is a problem, that's the way out, isn't it?
Kind of dissolve.
While you're sure it's a problem, you can't escape it. Hey, thank you, Anna. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
No.
Thanks,
Bye.
bye.
Great to hear your voice.
Absolutely. Let's catch up by email, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Take
Thank
care,
you,
my lovely.
everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
good night. Bye.
I think I'll drop off as well. It's late here as well. It's midnight.
Midnight hour is close at hand.
Yeah. But thank you, everybody.
you,
That's
Alan.
been especially this last bit with Giles as well, extremely interesting to actually see it in
Yeah.
action.
There you go.
You started it on a high note
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being here,
with
man.
your story.
Yeah, Giles. I mean, you look transformed even from here on the cam. During that, it was
Let me
amazing,
get my camera back
amazing.
on so you can see my face. No. There we go. So yeah, no. So do you. Your eyes have lit up. And so,
No,
so
very enjoyable evening, and thank you, everybody.
good. Well,
Thank
thank you
you.
And
for making it.
yeah, and I'll speak to you again soon. Thank you. I'll keep
Okay,
trying. And
bye.
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
And then there were 4.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what's happening now?
How many times did I ask that question? What's happening now, Giles?
Quite a few.
What's happening now? No.
That's a
I give him a few moments. I give him a few moments to think and let his mind drift a bit. And then I bring him back to now. What's happening now? Bring him back.
But when he got confused, Giles, you just froze. That was just like, it was just nothing. Not a blink of an eye. It was just like silence and
Well, it was just going.
yeah, but when you came back, it was like, I feel empowered. And it was really there.
I love the way that you can do it because it's presupposing there's a solution, and I didn't even know what that solution was myself, and neither did you. But you noticed the shift in my demeanor or my body language that would tell you.
I trust that when you feel good, you're going to make a good decision. So all my job is to get you feeling really good. And in order to get you feeling really good, like some people can, like if you get what's called like a natural somnambulist, you know, those people you say sleep and they just fucking go, right? Those people that are just like super hypnotizable people, like amazing subjects. With those people, you can just tell them, feel good, and they will, right? Other people, you have to kind of guide them out of it first. So you say something maybe a little bit confused, and that's why I say I use confusion as like a halfway house, because confusion can go either way, or not. Even if you don't say confusion, if you say not knowing or uncertainty, can go either way, right? So
Henrik or T. Harv Eker that said confusion is a sign that great learning is about to take place.
well, that's exactly it. If you think about it, right? Every single thing that you learned, before you learned it, you didn't know. And so you had to pass through not knowing to learn it. So that's what I'm saying, is that all positive potential is on the other side of what you don't know. And what you don't know is so much more in terms of size and potential and possibility and options than what you do know.
Whatever you're not thinking about now will empower you even more than you can even imagine.
Potentially, because you know, there is always the point that people always make, and it's a true point, and that is that bad things exist on the other side of what you don't know also. And that's why most people are afraid of not knowing, right? But there's no way of knowing if you stay on this side of not knowing. Do you know what I mean? The only way to go is to step through the not knowing and to be okay. And you might have noticed this. I'm going to give away one of my secrets right now, but why not? Right?
Do you want it recorded?
Every time he said, "I don't know," I said, "Oh, but you're smiling, or you're laughing," and I said, "How do you feel about those two things happening at the same time? That you don't know yet you're smiling?"
Yeah.
Because what I'm doing on a higher level, on a meta level, is I'm telling him it's okay to not know.
You dragged me into another meta state, you bugger.
Right? The whole
It's
idea
almost like
there
introducing
is telling them
feeling
it's
good
safe
instead
to
of
not know.
fear.
Right? That it's okay. You're safe still, even if you don't know. You can be fine. Right? And once they've had that experience a couple of times, even though I wasn't bringing his conscious awareness to it, on an unconscious level, where every time he was smiling, I'd be like, "That's right. Very good." Right? And I'll say things like that. And his
Excellent, yeah.
unconscious mind is getting it that, oh, it's okay for me to not. And then it becomes easier for him to make that move to go to the blue bit instead of the circle, because he feels comfortable enough to do it.
So by repetition, just tell me if I'm thinking right. By repetition, you don't know something, you're scared, then again you experience some situation when you're in the, oh, I don't know what to do, and you feel fear again. By repetition, automatically you assign fear to anything you don't know about.
Yeah, safety mechanism.
So you introduced like a different connection. Let's connect unknown to feeling happy, feeling good. You just introduced this new, how about if we will join it with this instead of fear? And when he said it's okay, he gave himself permission that is not just fear I have to assign to it.
You see, here's the thing, right? It wasn't his unconscious that didn't know. It was his conscious mind that didn't know. Because when I said, "That's right, you don't know, do you?" He'll go like this, which means his unconscious mind is saying yes. Right? Because if you nod, it's like yes. It's the unconscious yes. So his unconscious mind is telling me, yes, I'm with you, while his conscious mind is telling me, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that, again, with this metaphor of this is the conscious mind and this is the problem, it's like it's confused now. It doesn't know anymore. And that's the problem, is that, you see, the problem is that the conscious mind is trying to solve the problem. But the solution is not going to come from your conscious mind. It's going to come from your unconscious mind.
It's just like that
I
story.
always use this metaphor, right, of the captain and the crew and the ship. Okay, so the conscious mind is the captain, and unconscious mind is the crew and the ship itself. In terms of, like, the ship is like the body, right? But body is part of your unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind is the body, is the crew and the ship, and the conscious mind is the captain. Now the crew is very loyal to the captain. They will not interfere with the captain, right? When the captain is doing something, the crew will not get involved because they're like, oh, he's the captain. He will do it. He's in charge. We don't want to get involved in his way. But when the captain goes somewhere else and is now paying attention to something else, yeah, that thing that was a problem, the crew will come in the background when he's not there and they'll fix it. But they won't get involved if he's involved. You can't be conscious and unconscious of the same thing at the same time. It's one or the other. So I would say things like, oh, what are the other things that are staring you in the face that you've not been paying attention to, you haven't noticed yet? and he'll start paying attention to something else. And what I'm doing is I'm inviting his conscious mind to get filled and focused on something else that's not the problem. So his unconscious mind is willing to go and fix the problem while his conscious mind is paying attention to something else. Because if his conscious mind is paying attention to the problem, his unconscious mind is not going to interfere. Do you understand? And that's what it is. It's a habit. His habit was paying attention there. And so I broke the habit and made him pay attention to other things long enough that when he eventually came back to bring his attention here, something was different, because the unconscious came in the background and put an idea there. So when his conscious came back there, he's like, oh, I know, it's a gift now. But he didn't think of that before. He couldn't, because the unconscious won't go there while the captain, because the crew will never override the captain.
Very, very profound, very interesting. It kind of reminds me of that story that you were saying about the guy that lost his keys and was standing on
Oh yeah.
the light under a light bulb.
What's his name?
Edison.
No, man.
It was.
The
It was
I
years
mean, maybe
ago.
Edison
That
lost his
was
keys.
quite- Jeez.
It's possible Edison lost his keys as well. I don't know. Nazardine. It's Nazardine, right?
Edison did it first.
What are you talking about?
He's a copycat, this other geezer.
So Nazardine lost his key. Oh, Nazardine's walking down the street and he sees this old man underneath a street light on his hands and knees. It looks like he's looking for something. So he goes up to him and says, "You all right, mate? You lost something?" He said, "Yeah, I can't find the keys to my shop. I'm looking for them." He said, "Do you want some help?" I said, "Yes, please." So Nazardine gets down on his hands and knees and they start looking everywhere and they check every spot for ages. And after a while, he looks at him. He said, Nazardine looks at the guy and says, "Hold on. I'm pretty sure we checked every spot here, even very thoroughly, you know, twice, 3 times we've been over it, and there's no keys here. Are you sure this is where you lost them?" And the old man says, "No, I'm sure this is not where I lost them." He said, "Well, why the hell are you looking over here then?" He said, "This is where the light is. This is where I can see."
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of you know, the fish inside the circle thing, you know.
Well, guys, this has been a bloody good evening for me. I don't know how what it's been like for everyone else here, but
Amazing. It's always good.
see
It
some
was.
very happy, smiley faces. So that's a
Thank you.
great place.
Thank you
to
for
be.
playing
I
with
think
me.
you are REM. Happy, shiny people.
Yeah. And that's how we need to be.
Yep.
If we can take this reality that we've created in this this virtual space that we're meeting together in and make it our, and actually dream it and make it a real reality, make that reality real as part of our everyday lives. Can you imagine how much better we'll feel in everywhere we go and everything we do? Very, very grateful to you guys for being here and making this quite an extraordinary experience for me in particular. With that,
It was an experience to us watching you.
I'll make a point of posting this video. I've been a little bit for you. The last couple of meetups, I haven't put them on. I haven't put them on YouTube because I don't really want people watching them unless they participated in the
private then.
in the meetup.
I think you can make the video private and then you can send private links to people.
I can send private links and it'll be unlisted. I'm more than happy to do that. I'll put the other ones up there. I was just being a little bit.
It does take time, doesn't it?
Elijah, he's been procrastinating. Stop it.
Do you see how quick the chain is, though? Just the
The
word,
result, look.
Yeah.
just the word procrastinate, and he's already at the end of the chain in the positive state. It's so good. The anchoring is pretty strong. It's very good, Charles.
That's powerful. That's just intensified it again.
All right. It's so
It
good.
wasn't by accident, trust me.
No, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jason.
No.
Checks in the
He's
mail.
a
mate.
sod, isn't he? He did that when he did that to you the last time when I put that picture up of the squirrel and it's nuts completely.
Yeah, Jason is an influence ninja.
He definitely is. Sometimes the quiet ones are the worst.
He's just waiting for, or maybe like an influence sniper, just waiting for that opportunity, and then boom, we got you.
There was a nugget and a gap.
It's a what?
There's always a nugget and a gap. Perfect time to jump in with something interesting.
Yeah. Oh, you're good at that.
Mm.
So, should we? Are we done tonight, or do we?
At the very least, I think at the very least you can stop recording.
Yeah, I think so. Because I keep getting messages from